Normally, I would wait until I would do a stream starting screen, but I quit while I was in the middle of doing some Codex entries, so I'm just going to go ahead and just straight up go straight to that. Just try to knock it out of the way so that people do come in. Boom, boom, boom. This will be out of the way, and you guys won't have to watch this. But I do want, if you guys do want to watch it, you guys can watch my videos and stuff like that. So, what am I forgetting? Welcome to the Red Toucan channel. We are back with Dragon Age Origins. We're reading some Codex entries here. We are in the middle of culture and history section. So we're in the culture of Ferelden. The Fereldans are a puzzle. As a people, they are one day away from reverting to barbarism. They repelled invasions from Treventer during the height of Imperium, with nothing but dogs and their own obstinate disposition. They are the coarse, willful, dirty, disorganized people who somehow give rise to our prophet ushered in an era of enlightenment and toppled the greatest empire in history. There are a few things you can assume safely in dealing with these people. First, they value loyalty above all things, beyond wealth, beyond power, beyond reason. Second, although they have nothing in the entire country which you would likely to think at all remarkable, they are extremely proud of their accomplishments. Third, if you insult their dogs, they are likely to declare war. And finally, the surest sign that you underestimate the Freldens is if you think you can come to understand them. Empress Selene of Orlais in a letter to her newly appointed Master to Dinner. Dogs. Ferelden. Everybody loves their dogs. I'm frequently asked during my travels in other lands to explain the dogs omnipresent in Ferelden. Inevitably, I tell my foreign questioners that there are no more dogs in my homeland than in their own. In every civilized corner of Thedas, an astute observer will notice dogs employed in hunting game, keeping barns and storehouses free of vermin, herding livestock, guarding homes, or even used as beasts of burden in the mountains. It is simply that Ferelden show appreciation for the work that our dogs do, and perhaps the reason for that is entangled up in mythology. Hafter, the first man to be named Terran, the hero who united the Almari ancestors to drive back the Darkspawn of the Second Blight, was reputed to be the son of a werewolf. Now perhaps this was meant to be some comment on his temperament, or simply a way of making a great man even larger than life. But more than half the noble families of Ferelden claim to be descendants of Hafter, and consequently many of our people believe they have some distant kinship with wolves. It's only good manners to be polite to one's kin. Where that one came from. That's a weird one. It's a weird one. Geography of Ferelden. The Kingdom of Ferelden is the southernmost civilized nation in Thedas. Although some scholars dispute the claim to civilization, it is perhaps the most physically isolated of all kingdoms of Thedas. To the east is the Amaranthian Ocean, to the north the Waking Sea, and to the south the Kukari Wilds, which in the summer months are a vast peak bog. In the winter become treacherous labyrinth of iced over waterways. The Frostback Mountains guard the western border, and only a narrow plain between the mountains and the sea allows travel between Ferelden and Orlais. Most of the land in the central portion of the kingdom, called the Banorn, is the open plains. These are crossed by remnants of ancient Treventer highway that once connected Val Royale with Ostagar. On the edge of the Kukari Wilds, the western part of Ferelden is dominated by Lake Calenhad, a huge caldera filled with runoffs of glaciers from nearby mountains. Lake Calenhad is home to the famed Fortress of Redcliffe, as well as the Circle Tower, which houses Ferelden's Circle of Magi. In the east is the vast Brazilian forest, which superstitious folks profess to be haunted, and for which arises the Dragon's Peak, a solitary mountain that guards the capital city of Dinner. Okay, sweet. From the Pursuit of Knowledge, Brother J and TV. The Free Marches. The Free Marches are not a kingdom, not even a nation in the most basic sense. People from this region dislike being lumped together as marchers. Rather, they are a collection of independent city-states, united only when it suits them. In this respect, they resemble the Banorn before the arrival of King Calenhad. Because of this, the Free Marches have no capital, and what passes for a central government exists only sporadically, a sort of landsmeet that convenes only during times of crisis. I arrived in time for a grand tourney, which was on in Tantervale. A remarkable sight indeed. I saw Avar hillsmen test their mettle against Orlesian chevaliers, riders from the Anderfels buying Navarran cavalry horses, and Tevan craftsmen selling their wares to Treventer mages. All of Thedas was on display. The Pursuit of Knowledge, the Travels of Chantry Scholar by Jennifer TV. Wow. To our neighbors, Ferelden seems utterly chaotic. Unlike other monarchies, power does not descend from our throne, rather arises from the support of the freeholders. Each freehold chooses the ban or Arl to whom it pays allegiance. Typically, this choice is based on proximity of the freehold to the lord's castle, as it's worthless to pay for the upkeep of soldiers who will arrive at your land too late to defend it. For the most part, each generation of freeholders cast its lot with the same ban as their fathers did, but things can and do change. No formal oaths are sworn, and it is not unheard of, especially in the prickly central Banord, for bands to court freeholders away from their neighbors, a practice which inevitably begets feuds that last for ages. Terrans arose from amongst the bands, war leaders who in antiquity had grown powerful enough to move either other bands to swear fealty to them. There were many Terrans in the days before King Callan, but he succeeded in whittling it down to only 2. Gawain in the south and Highever in the north. These Terrans still hold the oaths of bands and Arls who they may call upon in the event of war or disaster. And similarly, the Terrans still hold responsibility for defending those sworn to them. The Arls were established by the Terrans, given command of strategic fortresses that could be overseen by the Terrans themselves. Unlike the Terrans, the Arls have no bands sworn to them and simply somewhat more strategic bands. The king is, in essence, the most powerful of the Terrans. Although Dinerum was originally the Terran of the king, it has since been reduced to an Arling, as the kingdom's domain is now all of Ferelden, but even the king's power must come from the bands. Nowhere is more evident than during the Landsmeet, an annual council from which all the nobles of Ferelden gather, held for almost 3,000 years except odd interruptions during blights and invasions. The sight of a king asking for and working to win the support of lesser men is sort of constant wonder to foreign ambassadors. Frostback Mountains is where the dwarves are. This is the western side. Even mountains, so I'm close. Mountains had a heart once when the world was young. Korth, the mountain father, kept his throne at the peak of Belanus, the mountain that lies in the center of the world, from which he could see all the corners of the earth and sky. And he saw strong men become weak, brave men grow cowardly, and wise men turn foolish for love. Korth devised a plan that he might never be betrayed by his own heart, by taking it out and hiding it where no soul would ever dare search for it. He sealed it inside a golden cask, dipped in the earth, and raised around it the fiercest mountains the worlds have ever seen, the Frostbacks, to guard it. But without his heart, the mountain father grew cruel. His chest was filled with bitter mountain winds that shrieked and howled like lost souls. Food lost its flavor, music had no sweetness, and he lost all joys and deeds of valor. He sent the avalanches and earthquakes to torment the tribes of men. Gods and men rose up against him, calling him a tyrant, but with no heart, Korth could not be slain. Soon there were no heroes left, either among men or gods, who would dare challenge Korth. The Lady of the Skies sent the best of her children, the swiftest, the cleverest, the strongest flyers, to scour the mountains for the missing heart, and for a year and a day they searched for, but sparrow and raven, vulture and eagle, swift and albatross returned to her with nothing. Then the ptarmigan, I would assume, as the PT, assume that the P is silent. Ptarmigan spoke up and offered to find the god chief's heart. The other birds laughed, for the ptarmigan was a tiny bird too humble to soar, which spends half its life hopping along the ground. The lady would not give the little creature her blessing, for the mountains were too fierce even for eagles, but the ptarmigan set out anyway. The little bird traveled deep in the frostbacks where she could not fly. She crawled. She hugged the ground and weathered the worst mountain winds. So she made her lonely way to the valley where the heart beat. With all the gods' terrible deeds, the heart was far too heavy for the tiny bird to carry, so she rolled it little by little out of the valley and down the cliff. When the golden cask struck the earth, it shattered. The heart was full almost to bursting, and the pain it roused the mountain god to come see what had happened. When Korth neared his heart, it limped back into his chest, and he was whole again. Then Hakon Winter's Breath bound Korth's chest with 3 bands of iron and 3 bands of ice, so it could never again escape, and all the reigning gods named the ptarmigan honored above even the loftiest eagles. Ptarmigan, Avar Tail. Here we go. Chantry Scholar. The human settlement of Gawain is built directly on top of Dwarven outpost by the same name. Prior to the First Blight, it is a time when Ferelden was not yet a nation and still carved up by barbarian tribes. The outpost served as a source of salt and a means by which the dwarves could reach the small The sea lanes of the Amaranthine Ocean unwilling to come to the surface, the dwarves made an agreement with the local Terran to build a port and relied on humans to ferry goods between the ships and underground post. This made Gwaren a prosperous place and extraordinary valuable for a time. When in the Divine Age, the dwarven kingdoms fell to the Darkspawn and the deep roads were closed off, so too did the dwarves disappear from Gwaren. The human settlement, the envy of surrounding barbarian tribes, was assaulted and sacked, its wealth stolen. The town remained, however, and despite its remote location, continued to find value as a source of fish and timber. As the first settlement liberated by King Merrick and Loghain during the Ferelden Rebellion, Gwaren was eventually granted to Loghain when he became Terran in 911 Dragon. So, 19 years ago. Okay. Highever. This is the one that we were tearing up. Castle Highever. Oh, I'm going to take a little sip of this. Wet my whistle. Castle Highever has stood since the Divine Age, when it was not entirely independent Banorn, but merely an outpost of growing Banorn of Amaranthine. In the days before Amaranthine became an Arling itself, the outpost of Highever was originally held by the Elston family, cousins of the Howes, in the Age of Towers. However, Ban Conabar Elston was murdered by his wife, Flemeth, thus ending the bloodline. Conabar's captain of the guard, Sarim Kuzlin, took the land and title. The Kuzlins declared their independence from Amaranthine, starting a war that lasted 30 years. When the dust settled, Highever was on its own and in possession of half the land that had once been southwestern Amaranthine. However, it became a Tyrann during the Black Age when Helena Kuzlin gathered the lords together and under her banner to drive the werewolves out of their lands, earning herself the title of Tyranna almost as an afterthought. Today, Highever is one of only 2 remaining Tyrannas, making the Kuzlin family second in rank only to the king. The Kuzlin family, however, was all but wiped out in an unexpected attack by the Arl of Amaranthine, and the fate of Tyranna is now in question. Which we now own. This is what we're actually at, is Amaranthine. So they gave my land back to me, basically, because I'm the warden commander of Ferelden, and they gave Amaranthine to the Great Wardens. So it's here that we can rebuild. Lake Calenhad, the central lake of Ferelden. The waters of Lake Calenhad are steeped in legends. The Evar people say that it was once the site of Belanus, the mountain which stood at the center of the world, from which Korth, the mountain father, surveyed the earth and sky, but it was destroyed in the battle between Korth and the serpent Nathramar, leaving only a vast crater behind. When the Lady of the Sky saw that Belanus was gone, she wept and her tears filled the crater, making the lake. The Deventers believe that the waters of Lake Calenhad were blessed by Razikale, god of the mysteries, and that those who drank from them were granted special insights. This is why they built the great tower on an island in the middle of the lake, hoping the powers of the lake would aid their magical research. Most of us know the legend of King Calenhad, which gives the place its name. It is said that Calenhad Theron spent a year and a day in the Tower of Magi. Each day he drew a single cup of water from the lake and carried it to the Formari at the top of the tower. By magic, each cup of water was forged with a single ring of mail armor the circle gave to Calenhad. In that armor, made from the lifeblood of the land itself, no blade could strike him, no arrow could pierce him, and as long as he stood on Ferelden soil. Interesting. Lothering. In ancient times, Lothering was little more than a trading post that served the fortress of Ostagar to the south. Nowadays, it's larger, serving Redcliffe, the community of merchants and surface dwarves near Orzammar. Its location on the North Road gives it strategic value, so control of Lothering has historically been a matter of contention between southern Banorn and the Southreach Arling. King Calenhad himself stepped in and awarded the town to Southreach in the Exalted Age, which has largely ended the feud, or at least the appearance of it. King Merrick, Theron, Alistair's dad, and Kaelin's dad. So, it is difficult to separate the man from myth. The last survivor of the bloodline King Calenhad, the Silver Knight, Merrick drove the Orlesian forces from Ferelden's borders, reclaimed the throne, and freed our people from foreign tyranny. All true and all larger than this life. He was born in hiding near Cathril's crossing to the rebel queen Moria, and grew up in the rebel camps, an outlaw in his own country. When the rebel queen died, Merrick inherited her homeless nobles, malcontents, and displaced freeholders. With the aid of his friend Loghain MacTier built them into an army. After a pivotal battle of Riverdane, Merrick took the throne. He married Rowan, daughter of Rindoran, Gurin, Earl of Redcliffe, and began the long, slow process of rebuilding everything Orlais had demolished during 70 years of occupation. Navarra. The fourth time I attempted to cross the border into Navarra from Orlais was turned back by Cavaliers. I decided to take a more roundabout path, a ship back to Ferelden, and then around to Navarra, another to Navarra. The outcome was more than worth the trouble. The whole country is filled with artistry, from statues of heroes that litter the streets to even the meanest villages to the glittering golden College of Magi in Cumberland. Perhaps nowhere is more astonishing than the vast metropolis outside Navarra city. Unlike most other followers of Andraste, the Navarrans do not burn their dead. Instead, they carefully preserve their bodies and seal them in elaborate tombs. Some of the wealthiest Navarrans begin construction of their own tombs while quite young, and these become incredible palaces complete with gardens, bathhouses, and ballrooms, utterly silent, kept only for the dead. So it's Egypt. Okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot of medieval places, because China was the same way. You begin construction of your tomb very young. So, the noble families of Ferelden. The occupation left empty castles in the wake. Whole families were butchered in the initial invasion, and all those who couldn't or wouldn't bend knee to the Emperor's puppet king were declared traitors and hunted. Many bloodlines ended on chevalier blades, at dusty crossroads, and forest clearings, or in freeholds. And then there were the turncoats. To curry favor with their new masters, some nobles took up arms against their brothers. They betrayed and murdered the rebel queen, an act that created even more vacant titles and lands once King Merrick exacted justice. That Ferelden did not fall apart after the Orlesians left is a testament to the strength of King Merrick. The old families still held grudges against those who sided with the Emperor, and those new families that had been granted titles were viewed as interlopers. The landsmeets that followed Merrick's coronation were tense to say the least. I can imagine. The Old God. So, Dumat, Dragon of Silence. So that's what it's Earthemiel, which was Earthemiel. Apparently was the dragon that we slayed, was the archdemon of this blight. Dumat was the first blight. Dumat, the Dragon of Silence. Zekiel, Dragon of Chaos. Toth, the Dragon of Fire. Andoril, the Dragon of Slaves. Earthemiel, the one we just killed, the Dragon of Beauty. Razakil, Dragon of Mystery. Lusican, the Dragon of Night. There were 7 old gods, great winged dragons that were said to rule over the ancient world. The Chantry maintains that they were responsible for the original sin, that they turned humanity away from their true creator through deceit. Humanity's faith faltered, and thus the Maker turned away from the world, but not before trapping the old gods in eternal prisons beneath the earth as punishment. Scholars assume that the old gods must indeed have been real at one point, but most agree that they were likely actual dragons, ancient high dragons of a magnitude not known today, and impressive enough to frighten ancient peoples into worshipping them. Some even claim that these dragons slumber as a form of hibernation, not as a result of Maker's wrath. Regardless of the truth, legend maintains that even from their underground prisons, the old gods were able to whisper into the minds of men. The Archon Thalassen, first of the Magisters, who claimed to have contacted the old god Dumat, used the blood magic Dumat taught him to attain incredible power and to enter and declare himself ruler of the empire. In return, he established the first temples worshipping the old gods. The dragons became equated everywhere with imperial power. To date, 4 gods are said to have risen as corrupted archdemons. Dumat the first, most powerful, was slain at the Battle of Silent Fields. Zakiel fell at the Battle of Starkhaven. Toth died at the Battle of Hunterfell. And Andoril was felled by Garahil, the legendary Great Warden, at the Battle of Asil. The archdemons have been identified only after years of argument among scholars, and to this day it is unclear whether the archdemons were truly old gods and not simply dragons. All it is known is that the Darkspawn hunt for them deep underground. If they are truly the old gods, as many scholars believe, then they have only 3 blights remaining. When all the old gods have risen and been slain, however, what will happen? Will the blights end forever and humanity earn forgiveness from the Maker at last? We shall see. So, as you can see, there's already been 4. We just killed the 5th. So, Dumat was first, Zakiel, Toth, Andoril. Earthemiel was the one we just killed. Zazakiel and Lusican. Dragon of Mystery and Dragon of Night are the only ones left. underground because we just killed Earthemiel. So there's still 2 more blights. The Orlesian Empire. Basically France, if you can't tell from how they talk. They just change the names a lot, but a lot of it is lore and stuff from our world here. There are many lords and ladies in Val Royeaux, and I mean this literally. Once the system of noble titles in Orlais was labyrinthine, there were barons and baronesses and baronets and sir barons and a horde of others, each with its own origins and own nuances of comparison. The Orlesian aristocracy is ancient and much given to competition. All the nobility play the grand game, as it is known, whether they wish to or not. It is a game of reputation and patronage, where moves are made with rumors and scandal as the chief weapon. No gentle game this. More blood has been drawn as a result of the grand game than any war the Orlesians have fought of this, I assume by almost every gentleman here. As far as titles went, everything changed with the coming of Emperor Drakon, who established the Orlesian Empire as it exists now, and who created the Chantry. There is no more venerated figure in Orlais and Val Royeaux. The statue of Drakon stands as tall as the statue of Andraste. Drakon determined that the grand game was tearing Orlesian apart, so he abolished all titles besides his own and Lord and Lady. I am told with some twittering amusement that this action did not end the grand game as Drakon had intended. Now the lords and ladies collected unofficial titles rather than official ones, such as the Exalted Patron of Tassaclay or Uncle to the Champion of Terames. It is a headache to remember such titles, and one winces to think of the poor doorman at the balls who must rattle them off as each guest enters the room. The aristocracy is different from Ferelden in other ways as well. The Orlesians' right to rule seems directly from the Maker. There exists neither the concept of rule by merit or a slightest notion of rebellion. If one is not noble, one aspires to be, or at least aspires to be in good graces of a noble, is ever watching for a way to enter the patronage of those better placed in the grand game. And then there are the masks and the cosmetics. I have not seen so much paint since the kennels at High Ever, but that is another story. From Beyond the Frostbacks by Ban Turek of West Hill, 920 Dragons. That was 10 years ago. No, not long ago. Cast list. Now we are on to dwarf history and dwarf backstory. So the caste system, which, as I said, this is all basically, they took aspects of our actual real life society and put it in a game and changed the names a little bit. This is almost almost completely similar to the caste system of Hindu religion. So the caste system in Orzammar includes many groups of privilege, the nobility and the warriors above all others, but to a lesser degree the merchants and the smiths and the miners. Tradition establishes a clear hierarchy, but as in any culture with an upper class, there is also a clear underclass. These unfortunates, the so-called casteless, are believed to be descendants of criminals and other undesirables. They've been looked down upon since Orzammar's foundation. They've been taken up residence in a place called Dust Town, a crumbling ruin on the fringe of Orzammar's common areas. Orzammar society considers these casteless lower than even the servant class. Indeed, the casteless are not even allowed to become servants, as it is too honorable a position. They are seen as little better than animals, their faces branded at birth to mark them as bastard children of the kingdom, their home district a little more than a slum, is a haven for crime, organized and otherwise. Orzammar's guards seemingly cannot be bothered to patrol its streets. The best that most casteless dwarves can hope for is a life at a whim of a local crime lord, ended abruptly by violence or overabundance of toxic liched ale. Even so, there is some hope for the casteless, a dangling rope that offers a way into greater Orzammar society. Since the dwarf caste is determined by a parent of the same sex, the male of a nobleman is part of that noble house's caste. Strangely, it is acceptable for casteless women to train in the art of courtly romance to woo nobles and warriors. They are known as noble hunters. Any male born from such a union is considered a joyous event. Considering the low rate of dwarven fertility, the mother and the entire family are then taken by the father's house, although they retain their caste. Dwarves are, we know on the surface, are also considered casteless once they leave Orzammar, although this is only relevant to those who return, if they are allowed to return at all. Dwarves who leave for the surface, the sun-touched, as they're so-called behind their backs, lose their connection to the stone and the favor of the ancestors, and thus are worthy of little more than pity, for dying they are said to be lost to the stone forever. But that way it seems a sad existence indeed. From Stonehalls of Dwarves by Brother Jane TV, Trantry Scholar. A lot of this is dreamt by the JTVs. Cass. This is going to tell you more. Visitors to Orzammar should keep in mind that hierarchies of dwarven society are much more complex than our own. It's easy to gravely insult a man simply by mistaking his position. Since that can lead to unnecessary loss of life and limbs, I will attempt to mitigate the danger for my fellow travelers. The society of Orzammar is divided into nobles, warriors, smiths, artisans, miners, merchants, and servants. Now you undoubtedly saying to yourself, we have all these divisions among our own people. This is a dangerous misconception. Certainly we do have nobility, artisans, merchants, and these positions are largely inherited from our parents. However, the younger children of noblemen often choose to be artisans or soldiers. The sons of merchants may join the army or become servants or apprentice themselves to a craftsman. This is all freely chosen, limited perhaps by circumstances of birth, but still chosen. What is a matter of choice for most human folk is dictated entirely by the birth by dwarves. No one may become a smith who is not born to smith caste parents. A servant who marries a noble woman will never be a noble himself, and although his daughters would be nobles, his sons would be servants, for daughters inherit the caste of their mother, while sons inherit the caste of their father. From In the Pursuit of Knowledge of Chantry Skull. Life in Orzammar. The dwarves of Orzammar are quite unlike those in most human cities. Although Orzammar derives from its vast wealth from trade with human kingdoms, all dwarves who come to the surface trade are stripped of their position in society. Dwarven merchants are so ubiquitous in human cities that many people labor under the impression that dwarves are all dwarves are merchants, or that their whole race worship coin and trade. But these surface dwarves are atypical creatures, the ones willing to give up all ties to their kin and sacrifice their rank in order to conduct business. Below ground, the dwarves are people obsessed with honor, their own and that of their family. Most nobles incorporate chainmail even into formal gowns, because slights and insults are often turned deadly. There are people who revere excellence and strive to achieve it in all things. Even members of servant caste has been elated to Paragons, usually posthumously, in recognition of remarkable service. From Pursuit of Knowledge, The Travels of Chantry Scholar by Brother JTV. Yep. Deep roads. And dwarves actually live for a long time. They can live to be like, in this one, as most dwarves in like, most fantasy lived anywhere from 2 to 500. I think 500 is one that, like in D&D, like 400 or 500 years old is a dwarf. And obviously elves live like for thousands of years in most mythologies. Not in this one, obviously. They now live mostly, but I think dwarves in this one still live to be like 150 to 200 years old. So they're the oldest living races. Still. Excuse me. There isn't a dwarf alive who remembers the deep roads as they once were. There was a network of tunnels that joined the tides together. To be honest, it isn't even right to give them such a simple term as tunnels. They are works of art with centuries of planning demonstrated in geometry of their walls, with the statues of the Paragons that watch over travelers with the flow of lava that keeps the deep roads lit and warm. The cloud gazers up on the surface talk of the imperial highway built by magisters of old, a raised walkway that crossed thousands of miles, something that could only have been built by magic. Perhaps it is comparable to the deep roads, although we dwarves didn't need magic. True. I suppose it doesn't matter anymore. The Darkspawn rule the deep roads now. When Orzammar sealed off the entrances to the deep roads, abandoning everything that lay out there, we handed over the kingdom that was once to those black bastards forever. To think that there are ginlocks crawling over Bornamar now, tearing down our statues and defiling our greatest works. Corruption covers everything we built there. Every dwarf who goes out and comes back says it gets worse with each passing year. The foulness spreads a little further. And cloud gazers think the Darkspawn are gone just because they aren't spilling out onto the surface. One day when Orzammar is gone for good, they'll find out differently. Those Darkspawn won't have anywhere else to go but up, and they'll do it. The surface folk will have themselves a blight that will never end. Transcript from a conversation of the Dwarven Mining Cast, 890 Blessed. The city of Orzammar itself. Kalsharak. That's actually the capital of all Dwarven society is Kalsharak. So we'll get there. Dwarves are lauded for their craftsmanship, and the city of Orzammar is one of the finest works. Orzammar lies at the heart of Frostback Mountains, Deep underground, the city arcs upward from the royal palace, which is built around a natural lava vent, continually fountaining liquid rock, which both lights and heats the entire cavern. The topmost tier of Orzammar is home to the noble castes, with their palaces fanning out in both directions from the court of the king as well as to the Shaperate, which leaves a repository for all. But where are the female dwarves? There are female dwarves. There are female dwarves in this. It's Dragon Age, Dennis. Jesus. Organ. Oh, you didn't have to cheer. There are female dwarves in this. You can be a female dwarf in this. In this game, you can actually create a female dwarf character. I'll show you one after I get done with the Codex entries here. There is female dwarfs. I can show you. He should know. I think he's played Inquisition. Your scout leader, Harding is a female dwarf. Dennis should know. Oh. The topmost tier of Orzammar is home to the noble castes. They do not have beards in this one. They're not beards like in a lot of other fantasy places have dwarves with beards, but the female dwarves here just don't have facial hair at all. You can't even have facial hair as an option. Just normal women, basically, just short. The topmost tier of home is the noble caste with their palates and kings, will repository for all dwarven knowledge. Lower tier is the commons, where the merchant caste holds sway and where the finest works of Orzammar craftsmen are for sale. In the center of the river of lava, connected to the commons by the causeway, are the proving grounds, a sacred arena where the dwarves by tradition settle their disputes. On one side of the fiery river are ruins of old dwarven palaces, fallen into disrepair, which the lords called Dust Town, now home to the city's castles. On the other side of the river are the deep roads, which once joined the sprawling dwarven empire together, but now, after centuries of darkspawn incursions, are largely sealed off. Nearly all knowledge of this network of underground passages has been lost, even to its builders. In pursuit of knowledge. Cut to Kal Shirak, the capital of dwarven culture and everything. 1155 of the Treventer Imperium will be known as a year of painful decisions, but we cannot waver. The threat we face is the greatest we've ever known. If we are overrun, all trace of the ancestors' glory will be undone. Orzammar must stand, and it must stand alone. Hormak, Kal Shirak, Gunnar. We have lost contact and must assume they've lost to the Horde. We must seal the weakest link in our defense, the deep roads that lead to our fallen brethren. I have ordered our finest demolitionists to place the charges. I ask that each of you think of those we have lost. They served as the warning that spurred us to action. I know the stone will embrace them. They are the foundation of our survival, and they will not be forgotten. Proclamation by High King Threestone. 200 years. Kal Shirak lives, you stone-forsaken deep lords. There is no greater hatred than a brother at your throat. I am back. I had to eat some food. I gotta do dishes. Gotta do my chores. Had to get my chores done. Especially considering Caitlin was making dinner and I had a bunch of dishes. And the way our sink is right here, and then our stove is like 2 foot away, and so our dishes usually go on the little patch of counter that's in between. That has it all has is a drawer and a cabinet right in between our sink and our stove, and so all our dishes pile up, and eventually if it gets too piled up, it'll pile over onto the stove, and so it kind of got that way. So Caitlin was making dinner, so a lot of times you have to move. If it gets to that point, you have to move the dishes to get to cook dinner. And I'm the guy that does the dishes. Sometimes I just don't have time. But I've decided I was I need to stop and go and get the dishes since Caitlin's making dinner. So, gotta be a good husband. Legion of the Dead. Yes, Stone's greeting, friend. You have fought senselessly in the Legion of the Dead. Motto of the Legion of the Dead. Legion accepts all. Stone was told by one of the legionaries himself, a dwarf who waited quietly at the entrance of the deep roads for the rest of his unit to assemble. They gathered slowly, each equipped with heavy armor and fine weapons, each painted with grim tattoos applied at their funerals the nights previous. Men working. I'm not that. Yeah, I have a job. Caitlin doesn't like doing dishes, so I take care of it. I'm a really neat person. I so OCD. I have to clean the house. I do a lot of the housework just because Caitlin can and she does, but I mostly do it just because it nags at me before anything. I do it without thinking. Like, I'll just grab a vacuum and I'll start vacuuming. Did it need to be vacuumed? No. Did I get itchy about it and want to do it? Yeah. I'll start vacuuming. So. For this is the nature of the Legion. They're all dead. Any dwarf may join the Legion so long as he's willing to give up everything he has. The funeral rites are somber. A final goodbye is said to the family and loved ones. Any material goods are dispersed to their heirs and lost words are said. And then it is done. The new legionary march into the deep roads, never to return. The Legion fights until the Darkspawn to the last, striking one final blow against the monsters that have claimed so much of their homeland. Many join the Legion to clear the slate. Criminals join to avoid punishment. The dishonored join so their houses and families need not suffer on their behalf. The bankrupted join so their debts may be forgiven. A very few join for the last chance at a glory, but the Legion takes them too. This group hopes to reach the fabled fortress of Baunamar. Once the Legion's home, associated with the greatest their Paragons, Baunamar is a holy place. Its loss, the last great blow against dwarven kingdoms, and its recapture would be a glorious signal to all of Orzammar. But capture it or no, all of these warriors will die in the deep roads. It is somber now, thought, and I know why the dwarves say the Legion's charge is the battlefield's most frightening sight. They have nothing left to lose. True. House Iduken. Oh, man. Oh. House Iduken, which is Balin Iduken. It's actually your house. You're actually Balin's brother or sister, depending on if you make a male or female dwarf. If you choose the dwarf noble storyline. Okay. The Assembly has never named a Paragon with so little disagreement as there was with Paragon Iduken. No naysayers, only a single abstention. His worthiness was unquestionable. His favor with the ancestors clear. But family rumors say that the man himself was deeply troubled, prone to fits of melancholy and self-doubt, never satisfied with his great achievement in protecting Orzammar. He died cursing that he would not manage to save the outlying ties. Before he rose to Paragon, he was little note. The memories tell us that he never entered a single proving, never sought to elevate his place among the warrior caste. He spent most of his years prior to the First Blight fighting skirmishes in the deep roads, keeping them free from the surface bandits, content to live quietly with his wife and daughters. When the Blight began, it caught Orzammar in the midst of a vicious inter-house war. Most of the warrior caste was caught up in the feuding, for as word of attacks poured in, each great house demanded that the army be sent to defend their tag, and no house would agree to sacrifice their own holdings for the safety of any others. The Assembly was so utterly tied up with the infighting that the Darkspawn spread, unchecked to the gates of Orzammar herself. In the chaos, Iduken grudgingly took command of the armies. He enlisted the aid of mining caste to collapse overrun packages, called upon the smith caste to supply them with arms, and bypassed the Assembly and the nobles entirely. With his leadership, Orzammar was saved from annihilation. For his insubordination, he was made Paragon. Yet he always considered it a defeat. I don't blame him. I do not blame him. History of Iduken, Paragon, King, Peacemaker. Don't really blame him. Yeah, Birdie, what happened?
Nothing.
Oh, you just caught it? You just caught it? Oh, come here. You guys want a birdie? You want a chicken?
You want a birdie.
It's a little chicken.
I swear these are Bernice's babies. What is Naomi doing?
A lot of bits.
Oh, you got something to say to me? It's a good little bird.
They're all good birds. These are. I think they are. I think they are Bernice's babies.
I really think they are. I guess small she is. Are you
They're all really small, and I think they're just this color because of Bruce.
Mm-hmm.
Go into your mama's hand. They're good chickens. These are the best chickens. This was the best batch of chickens I think we've ever had.
Yeah, they're sweet.
They just let you just walk up and pick them up. They'll walk up to your hand. This is the only batch of chicken. And it's one whole batch. Isn't that crazy? Like, they all were that way. The ones after that, no. The ones before it, no. Hey, Shrimpy, what's going on?
I don't think it's a toucan anyway.
See a chicken? These are the best. This was the best batch. One of the best batch of chickens.
She's falling.
Come here.
Okay.
All right.
Have fun.
Say goodbye. Bye, baby.
Bye, baby.
I gotta take care of a crying baby. The Paragons. As I studied among the dwarves, I became aware that the social system was as rigid as the stone that surrounded them. From the lowliest servant to the king of Orzammar, each dwarf has a caste. A rigid social standing which dictates what he may do and how he may do it. What fascinated me was that the dwarves, stubborn and proud as they may be, have built in a way for even the lowliest dwarf to bypass the caste system and reach prominence. Any dwarf who's made an achievement of a significance can be named a paragon, elevating the dwarf above all others. To be a paragon is to be recognized as essentially a living ancestor. Your words are considered ineffable, and the dwarves liken you upon a god. Your family, those you choose to ascend with you, become the founders of a new line of nobility. Indeed, every existing noble house among dwarves traces its line back to a founding paragon. It is a rare thing, however. In my visit, I learned that only one paragon has been elected in generations. The smith Bronca, exalted for her discovery of smokeless coal. I met Paragon Bronca only once during my stay, and I considered it an odd occasion indeed. Surrounded by those of her house, this ill-tempered woman was draped in the finest clothing and jewelry, and was obviously revered even above the highest nobles. Perhaps even above even the king, yet she seemed to enjoy none of it. The burden of being a living legend is great, it seems. Appears. Statues of paragons are found throughout Orzammar, though nowhere so prominent that in the Hall of Heroes, though which one passes through on entering from the surface, is a breathtaking sight to behold. Great works of stone, all seeming to hold up the ceiling above. It is meant to impress upon the visitors to Orzammar all who has gone before. I think it is also meant to remind dwarves going to the surface and thus abandoning their brethren forever and all they are leaving behind. It's true. It's true. It's quite true.
How many times do I have to call for you?
Go outside!
Go.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I would have told her to go if I'd heard you. I don't know why I didn't hear her. Orzammar politics. As dangerous as it is to mistake a dwarf's caste, it is far more deadly to mistake his alliances among the noble houses of Orzammar. Everyone in the city is aligned with someone, whether by blood or by word. Nobles do not engage directly in commerce themselves, as that is the domain of the merchant castes. But they do serve as patrons. They invest in shops or in artisans' work, and in turn reap a share of the profits as well as measure of the credit. Merchants and warriors alike benefit from the service of prestigious patron. The relative power of each house is ever-changing. It is usually safe to assume that whichever noble house holds the throne is at the top of the heap, but below that, things grow into a tangled mess. Houses ally with one another by marriage. They earn rank and prestige when combatants loyal to them or other bloodlines win provings. They earn it when artisans they patronize. They patronize, not patronize. I guess they do patronize too. In a bad way too. Yeah. Become sought after, well regarded, or even when the merchants they invest in become successful, the degrees of power that their achievements confer is so murky, even to the dwarves, that it isn't unusual for nobles to challenge each other to provings over whose smith forges better belt buckles, or whose servants have the best manners. Nor is it out of the ordinary to find two merchants arguing over whose noble patron has won the most acclaimed, for the rank of the patron is the rank of the client. Nowhere is the more apparent than in the assembly when the Deshers, representatives of each noble house, meet. Although the king technically rules Orzammar, kings are elected by the assembly, and so each king must work constantly to maintain the support of the Deshers. Kings who prove unpopular find their heirs seem deemed unacceptable to inherit the throne. Power then passes to another house. The Proving. Valos Atreidim. In the 23rd year of the reign of King Ragnar Iduken, an old man of the servant caste was accused of stealing a sapphire ring from his employer, Lord Dace. The servant was stripped of his position, and he and his family thrown to the streets, and soon after the servant died. The son of the disgraced servant challenged Lord Dace to a proving, declared that his father had been victim of a cruel injustice, and that the ancestors will bear him witness. Lord Dace had no choice but to accept. On the sacred stone of the Pruvian grounds, the nobleman faced the servant boy. Lord Dace carried a sword crafted by his own hand and was clad by his great-grandfather's armor. The servant boy had neither armor nor weapon. When the battle began, the boy fought like a whole pack of angry deep stalkers. Flinging himself upon the startled lord, reaching the sword from his hand, prying at his armor with bare fingers, the boy knocked Lord Dace to the ground and beat him until the lord begged for mercy. The boy and his family were reinstated to their place, and the Dace household and the virtue of the boy's father was not questioned again. Ancestors had spoken, and no one would question their word. Yeah. Told by Lordship report tag. Oh, so basically that's why I said, like, the proving grants you favor. Like they said, that one guy, they say, steer away from me, he killed his brother, because they know this guy killed his brother, but he did this basically the proving is a trial by combat. So, what? What Pokemon is Ginger Shrimpy? What is that? It looks like Zekrom and Seshiram, like mixed together. Is it like their alpha? Is it their Omega form? Their Alpha form or something is what they call them. What do they call them? Something like that. It's like it's Mega Evolution for legendaries. It was like, but are they merged together? Weird. I'm noticing on the avatar. I'd never seen that one before. But then again, I never truly played. The only Pokemon game I never played was Black and White. Never played Black and White. So. Oh, okay. Dwarven Faith. The chant of light is almost never heard in the halls of Orzammar. This is hardly surprising, for unlike the elves who were literally abandoned by their gods, or the Deventers who worshipped the dragons, dwarves have no gods at all. Even the concept of worship is foreign in Orzammar. Instead, the dwarves seem to venerate the stone, a name that gives the earth the self. This seems to be practical for people living underground and is perhaps a bit unimaginative. For guidance in spiritual matters, they turn to their ancestors. These ancestors, who said to have returned to the stone, communicate their wishes to the living via brutal trials by combat called provings. The ancestors' collective wisdom is maintained by the Shaperate, which can apparently store records in Lyrium itself. Set above the ancestors, above even kings or the Paragons, dwarves who have achieved such greatness they have elevated almost to godhood, these are the great figures holding up the hallway that lead to the surface of the first glimpse of Orzammar the outsiders see. Yeah, okay. Stellata Neget. I don't know this one. So I'm actually going to learn this with you. 913 Dragon. The Blight is building, though its years have been from being named by the surface, but the memories know the signs. The Legion has lost Boundamarth, though in truth it was lost to the living long ago. The spawn are moving freely and have numbers even the memories haven't seen. They will surge, release. We will fortify and follow. This is the way, and will be so until we fall. The surface wonders what has changed. From chapter 49. The Stone on Yield, a commentary on the rolls of years. 7-0 Storm. The wars continue in the depths, and border tags are lost. Orzammar fortifies and holds, but the lost ground is not regained, and it remains dead space. Where Darkspawn multiply, it is a surge, but the surface was not breached. There was no great archdemon behind them, no blight was declared, no rallying cry was given, the wardens slumbered. After centuries of constant skirmishes, a trend becomes clear. First line of defense, unacknowledged for centuries, weakens. 512 Exalted. We keep going back about 200 years. The surface declares the fourth blight, a number that means nothing to the stone. In the depths, the events are inverted. Our blight spanning the eternal years, 7 generations of shifting lines in darkness. Our ancestors are the reason the surface kingdoms don't know a darkspawn by sight. Why even their elders have never heard of an accounting firsthand. They believe the blights are defeated by a gathering of allies with a singular focus. Eventually, they will be lost by attrition in the depths. The spawn surges and releases. We fortify and follow, although doubts are raised. Chapter 27, Stala Negate, the Stone and Hell, a commentary on the roll of years. Yep. Keep going back. They went back another 200 years. They name it a blight. The third by their reckoning, it was just the fight to our ancestors continued, even though it shifts setting. The hordes, they press their border, surge and release, build across the surface, they fortify and follow. It's not their way to let the enemy rest. 325 towers. You know, that I know a lot about this lore to the point where I really want... There's actually, like D&D, a tabletop Dragon Age game. I want to get the rule book to it. I really want to play that. Ooh, I really want to. I really want to do stuff like that. D&D on this channel, Warhammer, Pathfinder, Settlers of Catan. I don't even care what kind of game it is. I'll play it. There's a Star Wars one. I can't remember. Fighters, I think. Starfighters. Just Jedi Starfighter. I mean, not Jedi Starfighter. Star Wars Starfighters. Something like that, I think. They have a bunch of them. I really want to play those on my channel. I really would love to. 325. 15 years later. The surface kingdoms declare victory. The horde is crushed. The push halted. And celebrations begin as humans thank the skies and their maker. Beneath their gaze and their feet, the Darthmon retreat to the steps of our tigers. New front lines are drawn across old. They settle in to breed. The memories say, as happened twice before and likely in the darkness before that. Yeah, so they came up here to help the Blight, but all it does is like they leave the deep roads. So it actually benefits the dwarves, but you gotta think about how selfless that is. They come up and help us. Even when like leaving the deep roads benefits them, because then they can go back and get tags. So that it said once the Blight's defeated, they just come right back down, and that's why they said just draw all new front lines. It's like same old, same old. Wow, it's cool. Orzammar history, chapter 1. The memories tell us that our kingdom once reached far beneath the mountains, and that the tags were almost beyond counting. Caer Shock was the capital then, home to all the noble houses, and Orzammar was simply the home of the miner and smith castes. It was with the Deventer Imperium that things changed. Paragon Garel moved the seat of power to Orzammar to more closely oversee trade that began with the surface. It seemed that our people were entering a new age of prosperity. The memories held no explanation for the coming of the Darkspawn, only questions. At first there were rumors, noises in the deep roads, a lost traveler here and there. The warrior caste sent men to patrol the road, and though the thought matter settled, they did not know that while we searched for them, they were engaged in a search for their own. Sleeping deep in the stone itself was the archdemon. They found him and awakened him, and the blight began. Darkspawn poured out of the deep roads like smoke then, and the warrior caste struggled to hold them back. Countless tags were lost in the first blight, but as ever, in the worst moments of our need, a Paragon arose. Paragon Augren led the defenses of Orzammar, and the Dark Horde was beaten back. The cost of victory, however, was great. Much of the deep roads were sealed off to hold back the Darkspawn, cutting off togs and even whole cities forever. Chapter 2. Drink. I'm so sorry if you guys don't like me reading the Codex entries. I just love this history so much. And I love this. This stuff's really interesting to me. Like, I was even in history. I was going to be, when I first went to college, like, I think I was probably a semester or two. I went through 1.5 semesters before I changed my major. But I was going to be a history teacher. I love history. I can read it. I would just read entire chapters of history books just for fun because I loved them. One thing I did not like I stopped reading history books because I hate how it's school textbooks, history textbooks is a bird's eye view of so many different things. It tries to encompass so many different things in like one chapter. So you learn. I stopped reading them because then I started reading the same things that I knew over and over and over again. And I get to a chapter about World War II, and then all you do is like you talk about maybe 1, possibly 2 battles, and you just talk about the outcome, and that's it. It's like, well, I know all this. World War I, I know all this. A lot of the Middle Ages stuff, I know all this. Like, that's why I love documentaries focusing on one specific thing. God. A documentary, like, one of my favorites was, like, just documentaries about a specific battle. You talk about the depth and the detail that goes into it. Like, there was one that's really good. It's called World War II in Color. It's on Netflix. Greatest Battles of World War II. An entire episode is dedicated to one battle. And you were told everything about that one battle. Actual footage from that battle, all the commentary from that battle, maybe even a witness from that battle of World War II. It's so good. You guys got to check it out. I love, if you're a history buff like me, so good. But stuff like this, I love. Stuff I don't know. You know, that's why I don't really read history books anymore, because it's like, I know our history. But a lot of this is comparable to our history. So, we were losing the war against the Darkspawn, slowly, a few men at a time, but losing all the same. The warrior caste was dwindling with each generation, as more able-bodied men perished in their prime without fathering sons. With each generation, more of the deep road had been sealed, more tags lost forever. The kings of Orzammar watched and wondered how long it would be until nothing remained of our people but the memories. And then Paragon Caridin arose from the smith caste with a new weapon, golems. Giant soldiers of living stone and metal, each one was an army. With the Paragon's golems, we began to retake the lands we had lost. For a while, there was hope that final victory was coming. But at the height of the war, Paragon Caridin disappeared, and with him, the means to make golems. Several forays were made into the deep roads in search for the Paragon, but nothing was ever found. Over time, the Paragolems, who were damaged beyond repair, we began our slide once again toward extinction. Ostagar. Representing the furthest point of encroachment of the ancient Deventer Imperium into the barbarian lands of the southeast, the fortress of Ostagar was once one of the most important defensive holdings south of the Waking Sea. It stood on the edge of the Kakari Wilds, watching for any signs of invasion by barbarians known today as Cation Wilders. Straddling a narrow pass in the hills, the fortress needed to be bypassed to reach the fertile lowlands to the north, and proved to be extremely difficult for the Wilders to attack because of its naturally defensible position. Like most imperial holdings in the south, Ostagar was abandoned after Venter's collapse during the First Blight. It was successfully sacked by the Chastened Wilders, and then as the Chastened threat dwindled, following the creation of the modern Ferelden nation, fell to ruin completely. It has remained unmanned for 4 centuries, though most of the walls still stand, as does the tall Tower of Ishal, named after the great Archon that ordered its construction. Ostagar remains a testament to the magical power of the Imperium that created it. Yep. So we are almost done with culture and history. We're getting there. Excuse me. Back wants to pop. Parvalen, the occupied North. In the 30th year of the Steel Age, the first Kunari ships were sighted off the coast of Parvalen in the far north, marking the beginning of a new age of warfare. History calls this the First Kunari War, but is mostly a one-sided bloodbath, with the Kunari advancing far into the mainland. Kunari warriors in the glittering steel armor carved through armies with ease, their cannons the likes of which our ancestors had never seen, reduced city walls to rubble in a matter of seconds. Stories of Kunari occupation vary greatly. It is said they dismantled families and sent captives to learning camps for indoctrination into their religion. Those who refused to cooperate disappeared to mines and construction camps. For every tale of suffering, however, there is another of enlightenment. Derived from something called the Kun, there is either a philosophical code or a written text that governs all aspects of Kunari life. And perhaps both. One converted Shiharan reported piety for those who refused to embrace the Kun, as if the conquerors had led him to a sort of self-discovery. For all my life, I followed the Maker, wherever his path led me, he wrote. But in the Kun, I found the means to travel my own path. It has been said that the most complete way to wipe out a people is not blades, but with books. Thankfully, a world that repelled 4 blights would not easily bow to a foreign aggressor, and so the exalted marches began. The greatest advantage of the Chantry-led forces was the Circle of Magi. For all their technology, the Kunari appeared to harbor great hatred for magic. Faced with cannons, the Chantry responded with lightning and balls of fire. The Kunari armies lacked the sheer numbers of humanity, so many were slain at the Manaris Pell on both sides that the veil is said to be permanently sundered. The ruins still plagued by restless corpses, but each year the Chantry pushed further and further into the Kunari lines. Although local converts to the Khun proved difficult to return to Andrasti's teachings, by the end of the Storm Age, the Kunari were truly pushed back. Ravain was the only human land that retained Kunari religion after being freed, and its rulers attempted to barter at peace. Most human lands signed the Lomnan Accord, accepting the Tevinter Imperium. It is a shaky peace that has lasted to this day. Wish I should have wrote down like the ages and stuff like that. Because we're in the Dragon Age, which is the 9th century. Ooh. So it's not year 920. It's actually year 820. 830, I mean. Yes. So this is the year 830. It's been 830 years. And I say that because kind of the same ways when we call year 1192 the 12th century. Because it was year 1-1, like 1:1 after they created the Chantry. After Draken created the Chantry, it was year 1:1. So it began the first century. It would be year 1, So when it was 101 years after the creation of the Chantry by Draken, that was 2:1. So it wasn't 201, it was 101. So going back. So even though it says 9:30, it's actually been 830 years. Boom. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. That makes it a little bit different, but not much. Okay. The Kunari. Sten's the Kunari. Anyone who travels far enough to the north will eventually encounter the Kunari, white-haired, bronze-skinned giants, a head taller than a man, and frighteningly calm demeanors, and a sort of sparkling fire behind their eyes. For quite a long time, people believed that all Kunari were male, or that their men and women were simply indistinguishable. It was not until the Blessed Age that Aldamass and Ravain were allowed, however, briefly to visit Parvalin, and there they discovered that Kunari females do exist in abundance, and are quite easily recognized. The Ravaini say that Kunari have a certain kindness to them, or at least a conspicuous lack of cruelty, although I did not observe the creatures closely enough to evaluate their character. So. King Calenhad Theron once famously declared, "The fate of Redcliffe is the fate of all Ferelden." Certainly, the castle is the first and last defense of the sole land route into Ferelden, and the country has never fallen to any force that did not first capture Redcliffe. The castle, which despite being 3 times captured, is popularly described as unassailable, also guards one of the largest, most prosperous towns in Ferelden. Redcliffe Village is well situated near the mountain pass to Orzammar and the Orlesian border, and so serves as a center of foreign trade. For these reasons, Redcliffe is accounted an Arlen despite the smallness of the domain. The inhabitants of Redcliffe Village are primarily fishermen or merchants who ship dwarven goods through the pass from Orlais to Dinnerim. When the entire village smells of smoked fish on the certain late autumn mornings, the merchants in their finery do their utmost to pretend otherwise. Ravain. Okay, so this is the place that is Kunari. Okay, so, well, Kun, they follow the Kun, but they call people Kunari. So what's weird is that in this one, Kunari are just silver-haired, but they actually have horns in the next one. Like they have horns coming out of their head. You'll see them. So technically, Kunari is the term for people that follow the Kun, except we use Kunari as a term to refer to the horned, giant, bronze-skinned people that brought the Kunari. But technically, even if you're human, And if you follow the Qun, you're Kunari. So that's weird. I don't know. You do meet people, like I think in Dragon Age 2 you meet an elf that's actually follows the Qun. She's Kunari. So nowhere in my travels, not in the heart of Imperium, nor the streets of Orzammar, have I felt so much of an outsider as in Ravane. The chant of light never reached the ears of these people. The years they spent under the thumb of the Kunari left most of the country zealous followers of the Qun, but resistance to the chant grows deeper than the Kunari War. Ruvani refused to be parted from their seers, wise women who are in fact hedge mages, communicating with spirits and actually allowing themselves to become possessed. The chantry prohibition against such magical practices violates millennia of local tradition. Okay. Tevinter Imperium. If you can't tell, the Tevinter Imperium is basically the Roman Legion. That's what it's comparable to. Like, their story is very comparable to the Roman Legion. You know. And then, you know, they became the Orlais. And if you imagine where Orlais, even though Orlais is technically, they speak like with a French accent, and all their words are French, they're basically England in the way, the aspects of where they're positioned and how they're like how they got tied into the Imperium and then gradually became an empire themselves. So like how the Roman Legion went up into Great Britain and eventually found it, you know, most of the Britons that eventually mingled with the Romans and then mingled with Anglo-Saxons, became Anglo-Saxons and so eventually became England, became the British Empire. So, you know, even though the French have a French accent, a lot of their words are French, trying to be French, you know, kind of, they are kind of England with how it is. Because I don't think France ever had quite the empire that is proclaimed as Orlais, you know. So, and they try to kind of take different aspects of different countries and put it together. As Ferelden is kind of America, in a way. If you guys notice that, like, if you guys know, like except it's kind of the concept is that we were actually a nation before Orlais, where Orlais came in, and then our nation now is like this is like 50 years after the American Revolution, you know, kind of that's what Ferelden is kind of trying to be, you know, it's kind of going on the concept of America. They've taken different cultures in our world, given different names, given different land masses, you know, added things to it, and, you know, added the magical nature of elves, dwarves, mages, and stuff like that. But it's kind of what they're going for, and I think it's neat that they've done this. You know, it's kind of like almost relatable. So, I was just done talking and you walked in.
Oh.
So I was to see if you want to say anything. Tevinter Imperium. The Imperium is little more than a dilapidated ode slatin crouching in the far north of Thedas, drunkenly cursing at passers-by to recall her faded beauty. One can see that Mirathis was once the center of the world. Vestiges of her power and artistry yet stand, but they are buried in the layers of filth that the Imperium's decadence has accumulated over the ages. The Magocracy live in elegant stone towers, literally elevated above the stench of the slaves and peasants below. The outskirts of Minrathis was awash in a sea of refugees turned destitute by the never-ending war between the Imperium and the Kunari. And yet the Imperium survives, whether the sword or magic. Tevinter remains a force to be reckoned with. Minrathis has been besieged by men, by Kunari, by Andraste, and never fallen. Is your knowledge? Legend of the Juggernaut. This is the legend of that armor that we got. The arm of the Imperium is long. Once it reached even this forest, in the time when the barbarian tribes of Clane still ruled the land, the Tevinter Magisters fought to take it from them inch by inch. If need be, using terrible magic, the Magister Harak brought an army into this forest led by Alaric, his friend and general. For Alaric, Harak fashioned a suit of finest armor infused with lyrium and his own blood magic, named it Juggernaut, after the unstoppable giant golems guarding the gates of Minrathis. Thus armed, did Alaric win many victories against Clanane. After defeat it came from within. Alaric's own lieutenants rose up against him, jealous of the favor he had curried with the Magisters, and eager to take the Juggernaut armor from him. Alaric was slain. Weird. Was slain, and so as each successor gained the armor, the other lieutenants turned against him, and instead, the Deventer outpost fell to vicious infighting. In a fury, Magister Harak voyaged to the outpost and slew the last 3 lieutenants. Clanane, however, were already approaching the outpost in force. The barbarian chieftain of the Clane, desired the fabled armor himself, and even with all his power, Harak could not hope to stand against them all. Instead, Harak used the last of his own life force to cast a spell of blood magic that bound demons to the bodies of the 3 dead lieutenants, as well as Harak's own lifeless corpse. These bound revenants hid the pieces of Juggernaut armor, and although the barbarians sacked the outpost, the chieftain found neither the armor nor the revenants. The Juggernaut's armor legend lives on, and more than one brave soul has ventured into the depths of the Brazilian forest in search, never to return. And we actually got it. So, here you go. Geography of Thedas. A little bit more about geography. I actually really want to have like a map of Thedas. My goal. I really like Thedas. I'm a BioWare fan. You guys know me. As I said, I say it all the time. I fucking love BioWare. Oh, as I said, I already was thinking about what other playthrough I was going to play with this game, because I was like, I want to do a mage next, because I love these games. I love them. As much as you guys see me scream at them for some of the scenes, some of the levels I did, I'll be more prepared next time. Probably off screen, like just spend time just going around getting ingredients and making sure I have a bunch of health potion and grind. Mages do like those, like off screen, just sit there and do those proving big party battles over and over and over again and just grind up experience. So next time. It'll be a long time for next time. But maybe years from now when I play it again, because I always play these again. Always. Some way, shape, or form. So. Well, actually, I don't know if I play the Dragon Age Origins or Dragon Age 2 much anymore, because everything that goes on in Dragon Age Inquisition on console is based on the stuff you put into Dragon Age Keep. And so, unless I had to go in there and do all the changes again to reflect what I've done in these games, which is kind of a waste of time. And I had to be on the phone with EA to get everything changed over. It was such a pain. Such a pain. So now, it's just better to just not do this and just base my decisions off of what I've already picked. So, geography of Thedas. Thedas is bound to the east by the Amaranthine Ocean, to the west by the Tessarian Forest and the Hunterhorn Mountains, to the south by the snowy wastes that lie beyond the Orkney Mountains, and to the north by Dornak Forest. The word Thedas is Deventer in origin. It actually just means Dragon Age setting. It's Deventer in origin, originally used to refer to lands that border the Imperium. As the Imperium lost its stranglehold on conquered nations, more and more lands became Thedas, till finally people applied the name to the entire continent. The more northern part of Thedas is divided among the Anderfels, the Deventer Imperium, Antiva, and Rivain, with the islands held by the Kunari just off the coast. Central Thedas consists of the Free Marches, Navarra, Orlais, with Ferelden to the south. What lies beyond the snowy waste is a mystery. The freezing temperatures and barren land have kept even the most intrepid cartographers at bay. Similarly, the western reaches of the Anderfels have never been fully explored. Even by the Anders themselves, we do not know if the dry steppes are shallowed by mountains or if they extend all the way to the nameless sea. There must be other lands, continents, or islands, perhaps across the Amaranthine or north of Parvalin, for the Kunari arrived in Thedas from somewhere, but beyond that deduction, we know nothing. So, no one's really explored at this point outside of this. So, Oh. Excuse me. Oh. Vanandril, the tree of the people, which is the tree in the middle of the elven alienage. So mostly the old ways are gone. Each generation forgets a little more of the old tongue, a little more of the traditions, and a few things we keep from becoming simple habits, the meaning long since faded. So it is with the Vanandril, the tree of the people. Every alienage has one, I'm told, or they used to. When I was a little girl, my mother told me the tree was a symbol of Arlathan, but not even she knew more. Keeping the Vanandril is just a habit now. Many cities have let theirs wither and die, then chop them up for firewood. No great loss. That's sad. Hair out of their eye. Yeah. Sad. The Great Wardens. History of the Great Wardens. First Blight had already raged for 90 years. The world was in chaos. A god had risen, twisted and corrupted. The remaining gods at Deventer were silent and withdrawn. What writing we recovered from those times is filled with despair, for everyone believed, from the greatest archons to the lowliest slaves, the world was coming to an end. At Weissout Fortress, in the desolate Anderfels, a meeting transpired. Soldiers of the Imperium, seasoned veterans who had known nothing their entire lives except hopeless war, came together. When they left Weissout, they were renounced their oaths to the Imperium. They were soldiers no longer, they were the Great Wardens. The Wardens began an aggressive campaign against the Blight, striking back against the Darkspawn, reclaiming lands given up for lost. The Blight was far from over, but their victories brought notice, and soon they received aid from every nation in Thedas. They grew in number as well in reputation. Finally, in the year 992 of Deventer Imperium, upon the Silent Plains, they met the Archdemon Dumat in battle. A third of all the armies of northern Thedas were lost to the fighting, but Dumat fell and the Darkspawn fled back underground. But that was not the end. The Imperium once revered 7 gods: Dumat, Zachiel, Toth, Andorel, Razakael, Lusicon, and Urbathiel. 4 have risen as archdemons. The Grey Wardens have kept watch through the ages, well aware that peace is fleeting and that their war continues until the last of the dragon gods is gone. Yep, so we just beat Urbathiel. So the only ones left is Razakael and Lusican. Razakael and Lusican. Those are the only 2 that are left. Supposedly. Maybe more. I hate technology. What happened? What happened this time? Mike? What's going on? Oh, I can relate. I can relate. I work at a desk. Man, there's times I've spent hours just trying to get my computer to work and turn on. Like, I'm not kidding. I fucking hate technology sometimes. I agree with you. Whew. Aggravates me. It is said that in the midst of the Black Age, when werewolves stalked the lands of Ferelden in numbers that kept even every farmholder indoors and a hound on every doorstep, a powerful Arl of Armari people stood and declared that he would put an end to the threat. His Arlen stood on the border of a dark forest on the southern border in Ferelden Valley, and he claimed that the werewolves used the forest to launch their midnight assault on humanity. For 20 years, the Arl led an army of warriors and hounds deep into the forest in his hunt for the werewolves. He slew not only every wolf he came upon, but also every member of Chased Wilder folk. Any one of them, he said, could harbor a demon inside, and thus be a werewolf in disguise. For 20 years, the forest rang with screams, and rivers ran red. The tales say that an old chastened woman found her sons all dead to the Arlen's blades. She pulled one of those very blades from her own son's heart and plunged it into her own chest, cursing the Arl's name as she did so. Where her blood touched the ground, a mist began to rise. It spread and spread until it was everywhere in the forest. The Arl's army became lost, and it is said that they died there. Others say that they wander still. The ruins of his Arlen stand to this day, filled with the ghosts of women waiting eternally for their husbands to return. The forest of legend is, of course, the Kukari Wilds. There are so many legends about the great southern forest as there are shadows. And so the saying goes, the chastened Wilder folk have made their home there since mankind first came to these lands, and the wildlands spread as far into the south as anyone has ventured. Beyond the mists are vast tracts of snow, white-capped mountains, and entire fields of ice. It is a land too cold for mankind to survive, yet the chastened eke out an existence even there, and they tell of horrors beyond the wilds that the lowland folk cannot begin to comprehend. To most, Ferelden simply ends with the Kukari Wilds. There is nothing beyond the wilds. It is land of great trees, wet marshes, and dangerous monsters. What more need be said? Hold on. Okay. The Darkspawn. I'm pretty sure I've done this one. Yes, I have done Darkspawn. Okay, I have not watched this one. Okay. My dear Anika, I would not worry about the assembly. Let the nobles sit together and argue over who house owns the grandest tide. It keeps them from panicking, which they will surely do otherwise, and prevents them from making greater nuisance of themselves. War is the business of warriors. I would say that the enemy's strategy seems to be changing, but they never appeared to be a strategy before. Beyond destroying everything in their path, for weeks their numbers appeared to be dwindling. There was talk that perhaps we were getting close to wiping them out. We could not have been more wrong. For today we came upon the body of their main force. I cannot give words to it. And Nika, I have never before seen so much death in one place. There were darkspawn beyond counting, and at the heart of the throng a great beast, as tall as the palace of Orzammar. With the breath of fire, a paragon of darkspawn, perhaps for they seemed to pay a difference. They were leaving, marching toward the mine shafts which led to the surface, but I knew where I beheld them, that once they have devoured what lies above us, they will be back. Jesus. Okay, so I've done everything except characters and books and songs. Not even kidding. Alistair. We actually already know about Alistair. But we'll go and just go for it anyway. I never read his entry. You know, one good thing about the Blight is it brings people together. Alistair was a novice Templar when Nukin recruited him into the Great Wardens. Rescued, as Alistair would say. We know about these people, though. Okay, I'm going to do it anyway. I haven't read these Codex entries, so let's go ahead. Alistair was a novice Templar when Duncan recruited him into the Grey Wardens, or rescued him, as Alistair would say. His mother was a serving girl who died when Alistair was very young. He was raised by Eamon Guren, Arl of Redcliffe, for a time. Arl's wife, Isolde, suspected the reason her husband took interest in the welfare of this child was that Alistair was Eamon's son. She insisted that the boy be sent away to the Chantry. Isolde's suspicions were unfounded, however. Alistair was not Eamon's son, but King Merrick's. Eamon sheltered the boy to hide his existence from Queen Rowan, Eamon's sister. With a great deal of assistance, Alistair was recognized by the Landsmeet and Merrick's son and granted his father's throne. Queen Honora. We have been given the gift of freedom by our forebears, let us not squander it. The only child of the war hero Logain MacTier, Honora has never been one to stay quietly in the background. It is common knowledge that in the 5 years Honora and Kaelin held the throne together, she was the one wielding the power. She is held in higher esteem than her husband by the people of the Ferelden, nobility and commoners alike, and commands the respect even of foreign nations, having once inspired Empress Selene of Orlais to declare Honora Ferelden as a solitary rose among brambles. She sent her maid, Orlena, to Arleman's estate to ask for Tuki's help, escaping from Arl Redcliffe. As they fled Arl's estate, Honora in disguise, they were ambushed by Sir Catherine and the rest of murder. Tuki surrendered to permit Honora's escape. She made her way to Eamon Dinnerham's estate, then offered her aid to defeating the father of Landsmeet. With her help, Logain's support was ended. The bands fell in line behind Eamon. Tuki. Logain, however, would not accept defeat easily. He filled with the room with soldiers and attempted a coup. Fighting erupted, breaking the long tradition of Landsmeet, which was ultimately settled with a duel. In the end, Honora and Alistair agreed to marry and rule jointly, although Alistair postponed taking the throne until the Blight was ended. Yeah. We know all this. Third of King Indrin's children, Balin was always considered the last and least of his family, not the heir, not the favorite, nor the favorite, and not as accomplished as either sibling. Balin's most notable trait was his ability to stay out of trouble. His efforts paid off. He was named King of Orzammar by the assembly. Yep. King Kaelin, Alistair's older brother. Son of the legendary King Merrick, Theron, Kaelin was the first Ferelden king born into a land free from foreign rule in 2 generations. Since his father's death, he held the throne alongside the Queen Honora. He fell in battle alongside Duncan Ostagar. So this is the woman that was Logain's right-hand man. Right-hand person. Catherine came to Logain's service the hard way. She belonged to a poor family and was out doing work on the field when she saw a man on horseback being attacked by several bandits. She rushed to his assistance, found out belatedly that the man she saved was none other than the great hero Logain. Though she was hardly more of a child, he took her in, offering her position with the soldiers, and she climbed through the ranks through sheer determination. Becoming the commander of Merrick's shield, Logain's elite soldiers, was the proudest moment of her life. Took his war. This is the Malbari. Why does enough to know how to? And a penchant for driving Gokus to distraction. Connor Garrett. I feel like I'm sleeping, but I guess I'm not. While most of the bands and Arls of Ferelden cart their children with them to the Landsmeet in the interest of eventually marrying them off, Connor has spent his entire life at Redcliffe. It's hardly surprising the child possessed the gift of magic. By law, he should have been taken to the Circle of Magi at the first sign, abdicating his claim to Redcliffe. Instead, the boy was kept out of public view and his magic hushed, with disastrous results. All the mages are beacons to attract the attention of Fade spirits. Because of this, they are trained and tested by the Circle to ensure that they can withstand attacks from malevolent Fade creatures that seek entry into the waking world. Untrained, Connor drew the attention of a powerful demon that tore the veil asunder. He was freed from the demon's power at a terrible price, the cost of his mother's life. Wait, what? Is that... What? I didn't do that. No, I free... Okay, I guess it's maybe a default or it just does it anyway. But no, I actually saved both Isolde and Connor. So... Men and women from every race, warriors and mages, barbarians and kings, the Great Wardens sacrificed everything to stem the tide of darkness and prevail. Like many others, Duncan gave up his family name when he joined the ranks of the Wardens, a symbolic gesture of cutting ties. He might say he was a convenience in his case. However, his mother was from the Anderfels, his father was from Deventer. His childhood was spent in the Free Marches and Orlais. His people were everywhere and his homeland was nowhere. He was given the most impossible task of leading the Wardens of Ferelden, a kingdom that had thrown that order out 200 years earlier. Facing local suspicion and hostility, he set about finding recruits. He was killed in the battle against overwhelming numbers of Darkspawn at Ostagar alongside King Caitlin. Oh, hey, there's Myri. Just met her. Nobility does not exist without obligation. We owe all we have, even our lives, to our land and our people. As the maternal uncle of King Caitlin, Arl Eamon is... I'm still going. Yeah, actually, I quit for a bit. As you notice, I'm only an hour and a half in. I spent about 30 minutes eating dinner, and I came back. I don't know, I could always play Dragon Age. Last shot. That was going good. It is going good. All is going good. How are you still up? It's 1 a.m. for you, sir. Go to bed. Nobility does not exist without obligation. Okay. Redcliffe, while not a large or especially wealthy part of Ferelden, is a critical strategic location. The fortress guards the western pass that leads to Orlais, as well as the major trade route with Orzammar. A well-respected man, though not the most charismatic, King Caitlin once said of him, "My uncle Eamon is a man everyone thinks well of when they remember to think of him at all." He fell ill with a mysterious condition that even magic could not treat. It was no common ailment. Eamon was poisoned by a blood mage, Jowan, who claimed to be working for Tyrion Logain, or his life was saved only by the most extraordinary measures, finding the urn of sacred ashes, the remains of Andraste himself. His health restored, Eamon called the Landsmeet with the goal of wresting power from Logain and placing Alistair on the throne. With the question of succession settled, Eamon returned to Redcliffe to repair the castle's defenses for the encroaching blight. Hey, I understand. I understand that, coming from a dad as well. King Indran Iduken. This is the guy that died. We'd never met him because he died, and then we put Balin in his place after he died. So this was Balin's father. Denial of the traditions of our people does not qualify as a political technicality. Indran of House Iduken traces his ancestry back to Paragon Iduken, the greatest warrior of Orzamar's history, who beat back the Darkspawn hordes in the First Blight. The second son of King Angsanar Iduken, he became heir after his elder brother died in the Proving. The most respected king in 4 generations, he restored contact with Kal Sharok, the only other remaining city on the once vast Dwarven Empire, which had been lost during the First Blight. Huh. Flemeth. Here's the story of Flemeth. Oh, I don't know what story this is going to go off of, so I'm going to read it anyway. There are multiple different iterations. Oh. I didn't go very far at all. How many? Oh, we got Witherfang? Oh, wow, we got a while. Okay. You were required to do nothing, least of all believe. Ages ago, legend says, Ban Conabar took a wife to a beautiful young woman who harbored a secret talent for magic, Flemeth of Highever. And for a time they lived happily until the arrival of a young poet, Osin, who captured the lady's heart with his verse. They turned to the chastened tribes for help and hid from Conabar's raft in the wilds, until word came to them that Conabar lay dying. His last wish was to see Flemeth's face one final time. The lovers returned, but it was a trap. Conabar killed Osin and imprisoned Flemeth in the highest tower of the castle. In grief and rage, Flemeth worked a spell to summon a spirit into this world to wreak vengeance upon her husband. Vengeance she received, but not as she planned. The spirit took possession of her, turning Flemeth into an abomination. A twisted, maddened creature, she slaughtered Conabar and all his men, and fled back into the wilds. For 100 years, Flemeth plotted stealing men from the chastened to sire monstrous daughters, horrific things that could kill a man with fear. These Kokari witches led an army of chastened from the wilds to strike at the Almari tribes. They were defeated by the hero Cormac, and all the witches burned, as they say, but even now the wilders whisper that Flemeth lives on in the marsh, and that she and her daughters steal those men who come too near. Morgan's mother saved the last Great Wardens from death atop of the Tower of Bishal, but just who or what truth for me is a mystery. She was slain at Morgan's behest, at least apparently. Even Morgan said, I don't think she's dead. So, Brother Genetivi, the guy that gives us all the entries. And we saved him to get their own sacred ashes. So, as it is the duty of all true sons of the Chantry to make the chant heard from every corner of the world, I made it my mission to find as many corners of the world as possible. The Maker can hardly expect us to do one without the other. That's very smart. That's very smart. Excerpt from The Pursuit of Knowledge and Travelers of Chantry Scholar by Brother Genetivi. Story time. Story time! Brother Genetivi is one of Chantry's most well-known scholars, primarily on the basis of the stories he has published, which many of his contemporaries dismissed as fanciful, of his travels across the length and breadth of Thedas, and he appears to have been right. The final resting place of Andraste lay at the summit of a remote mountain. He returned to Denerim a little worse for wear, and he granted funds and manpower to mount an expedition to study the temple which the urn was kept. We already know that. Gregor! Gregor is the Knight Commander. Okay. It is the innocent folk of Ferelden who matter. I would lay down my life and the life of any mage to protect them. Grim and Tacturn. Gregor has been Knight Commander of the Templar forces, stationed at the Circle Tower for so many years that hardly anyone except the first Enchanter recalls that he is not simply part of the tower itself. Heremont, Balin's rival. No one is born with the rights to the throne. The sitting king may recommend a successor, but the assembly ultimately decides who will rule. House Heremont is one of the oldest noble houses. As old as Orzammar itself, Indran's most trusted advisor, Heremont is well known for being an able administrator, and the author of many compromises in the ever-warring assembly. His opposition of King Balin's bid for the throne ended badly. The assembly named the Prince King of Orzammar, and Balin's first act was the call for Heremont's execution. Well, damn. We saw all this go on, I know, but still. We're in hell, the asshole that killed my family. It will be good to ride in the battle once more, my friend. The Arl of Amaranthine wins along the sinuous northeast. I actually did read all this. He died, I think. Okay. Yeah, I already read all of his. Yeah, okay. Yep, already read his. So that's... Yep, we got Irving. Oh, basically just says... The only thing I didn't read was it says, how died at the hands of Tuki and Dinner. Yep. Everything else I already read. The circle will go on and we will learn from this tragedy, but be strengthened by it. There is no higher office in the Circle Tower than that of the first enchanter. The one who holds this title must not only be an able administrator, but also a mentor, leader, and surrogate parent to all mages of the tower. Irving has proven himself to be all these things with the added dose of cunning. Most apprentices know that little goes on in the tower that Irving does not know. He can soothe Templars angered by some childish magical prank at the same time that he lauds the pranksters and everyone walks away satisfied. Although much of the circle was... Hey, go ahead, man. Although much of the circle was destroyed by Aldridge's abominations, Irving survived and plans to reveal what he can. Lurk away, man, lurk away. This is... For the one who delivers the sacred ashes of Our Lady will have the esteem of Redcliffe and all the riches in my power to grant. The Arling of Redcliffe was the source of constant trouble for Emperor Reville during the occupation. It was rumored that since each new report sent the Emperor to a fit of violent rage, his court had taken to poisoning messengers before they could deliver their accounts. Isolde's family was the 10th to be given the difficult task of governing Redcliffe, and since most of the previous Arls had been murdered by their bands or beheaded by the Emperor, they did not approach the job with a great deal of enthusiasm. Isolde met Eamon, not realizing he was the rightful heir to her father's domain, and quickly became smitten with him for being part of the resistance. Never mind that it was her family he was resisting, perhaps a bit too romantic for her own good, she insisted upon staying behind with Eamon when the rest of her family was driven out. When her only son began to show signs of possessing magic, Isolde tried to cover it up, knowing that he would be taken away from her by the circle if she found out. She hired an apostate mage to tutor him in secret, little knowing that her tutor had been paid to poison her husband. Eamon fell ill, and Connor, desperate, tried to use magic to save his father, magic that attracted the attention of a demon. She gave her life to defend Connor from demonic influence, which is wrong. I didn't do that. I don't know why I even did that. So, in the cloister, away from the fuss and flurry of the cities, I found peace, and in that stillness I could hear the Maker. A lay sister of the Chantry, who can beat the stuffing out of trained mercenaries, will be notable enough, but one who also claims to have been sent to fight the Darkspawn by the Maker himself is unusual to say the least. She joined Alistair and Tuki in Lothering, insisting that she would prove theirs. Well, there was more to Liliana than even been apparent at Lothering. However, she spent much of her life as a bard in Orlais, a minstrel, an assassin spy employed by nobles of Valroyo, an elaborate game of intrigue. Her decision to join the Chantry was not merely a product of her disenchantment with the life of a bard. Liliana was framed by her bard master and fled to escape execution as a traitor. We know that. This was about Logan MacTier. War is cruel. Every soul has fought alongside Mark knows this, and in it there is no such things as innocence, only living in the dead. The decrees of guilt both bear. The degrees of guilt both bear. Logan was born a farmer during a time when his country was under foreign occupation. When he was still a boy, he joined the resistance, where his considerable tactical genius quickly became apparent. He became close friends with Prince Merrick, the last true heir to the Ferelden throne, and together they led the rebels to drive out the forces of the Orlesian Empire. Merrick raised his friend to the nobility, Mark, and Logain is now more of a symbol than a man. He represents the Ferelden ideals of hard work and independence. During the Battle of Ostagar, he fled the field, leaving Kaelin, and he then turned to Denerim and declared himself the regent to his daughter, Queen Nora, demanding that Ferelden follow him against the Darkspawn, upsetting a great many bands. His actions sparked a civil war. Logain's supporters found themselves fighting their neighbors who blamed Logain for the death of the king, as well as those who simply wished to take advantage of the power vacuum. He was defeated in single combat at the Landsmeet and summarily executed. Yeah. Myri was a knight in Ferelden's army until agreeing to join the Great Wardens. She could think of no greater honor and no better way to serve the nation than eager to undertake their joining. Morgan. Which of the one? Of herself, Morgan says little. She does not deny being a witch of the wilds, but beyond that, everything about her is in question. Her mother claims to be Flemeth. If that's true, Morgan might well be a very powerful witch, for the tales of daughter of Flemeth tell of twisted, monstrous women who can kill a man with fear. She was made to accompany the surviving Great Wardens. The payment, Flemeth said, for saving their lives at the Tower of Ishal. On the eve of battle with the Archdemon, she made an offer to the Warden, sire a child with her, and she could use it to capture the Archdemon's soul at the moment of death, saving the Warden who struck the killing blow. After battle, Morgan disappeared. Morgan's critical eye is not reserved solely for others. Knowing or not, she has a simple fondness for jewelry and is very peculiar about her appearance. That's a weird thing to add after all that. Really weird. Okay. Augren. I'm not saying it should be your first pick for a dance partner at the inaugural ball, but in the Deep Roads, I'm your man.
Can't find the ducks.
I don't know what to do.
Just telling you.
It's fine. Did you close the coop anyway?
Yeah.
Yep, nothing else we can do.
I know he didn't get him. He's put up.
Augren of House Conrad. I didn't know that was the last name. Conrad? Augren Conrad was once the promising member of the warrior caste. His house was not especially high-ranked, but many of its members, Augren included, had won notable victories in the provings, and were considered to be rising in prestige. When a Smith caste family with plenty of money but no political connections offered their daughter in marriage, his family accepted the match, then everything changed. His wife, Bronca, was named a paragon for her achievements. All of House Conrad joined her newly made noble house, Bronca, and vanished with her into the Deep Roads. As time passed, and it became more and more clear that Augren had been abandoned, he became the butt of jokes throughout Orzammar. He took to drink, which didn't especially help drunk and humiliated. He challenged another warrior to a proving over an insult and killed him. The match was meant to be fought to first blood, and as punishment he was stripped of his house and barred from bearing arms, the only fate worse for a warrior than exile. The Great Warden Tukey mounted a search for Bronca and found her, and the animal award for which we led her house to their deaths. Okay, got that. Oh, God. The golems of Orzammar once made up the vanguard of the Dwarven army, holding back the tides of darkspawn that flooded out of the Deep Roads, but the art of making them was lost, and many of them succumbed to wear and damage in battle. Shale has no memories either of the time spent fighting the Deep Roads or of coming to Honleith, only a few spotty and bitter recollections of the last master. Tukey unearthed Shale's control rod and awakened it, adding a bitter, malfunctioning golem to the menagerie of companions. 300 years earlier, she had been Shale of House Kadash, warrior of King Valtor, and a volunteer who chose to dedicate her life for all time to defense work. Either you have a valuable memory of it or a pitiful life to know nothing of regret. It's a pretty strong quote. The Noble Islands are remote, lush jungles that harbor cities rumored to be the most extraordinary ever built. These are the lands of the Kunari, lands that no foreign eyes ever see. Only the stories of the three exalted marches waged against the giants have reached the south until the arrival of Sten. The stoic giant in the cage was surely the strangest thing that people of Lothering had ever seen until the Blight struck. He was sent with a small group of Kunari soldiers to investigate the Blight and report back. Outside Lothering, they were ambushed by the Darkspawn. They fought off the attack, but only Sten survived. Farmers found him dying and took him in, and when he awoke alone and unarmed, he panicked, killing the entire family. Realizing he had sacrificed his honor, Sten waited for the villagers to come and surrendered, expecting death. His sword and his honor restored, Sten chose to continue with Tukey and take the battle of the Archdemon. We all know this. Van Tegan. Vanor were not okay. Younger brother of Arl Eamon of Redcliffe and uncle to King Kaelin, Tegan holds the Banorn of Ravensphere, a tiny province of Redcliffe squeezed between the Frostback Mountains and Lake Calenhad. Van Tegan avoids Denerim court except to go hunting with his nephew, and rarely makes himself heard at the land's meet, preferably to leave politics to his brother. Valendrin. This is the head of the alienage, the guy we rescued from enslavement. Excuse me, throat getting sore. I'm out of beer. Remember that our strength lies in commitment to tradition and to each other. Every alienage has a heron, an elder. It falls to the heron to arrange marriages for those without family, to negotiate with the guards when there's trouble, and to act as a sort of mayor and surrogate uncle to the people of the alienage. The title, like so many things, is a holdover from the time of Arlathon, for herons are not necessarily the oldest person in the community, or even all that old. Tradition gives the role to the oldest soul, the wisest, cleverest, and most level-headed. Valendran has been heron of Denram's alienage since he was in his 30s. He was nearly shipped to Deventer by the slavers, but was returned to the alienage by Tuki. Yep, I did that. It's perfectly alright to think about the many indignities you plan to inflict on your enemies, but to talk about it, well, that would be unladylike. Wynn's talent became apparent early on, particularly her skill at healing magic. She was well liked by all her mentors and was recognized as an exceptionally gifted student. Even the Templars who watched her could not deny that she represented the best the circle had to offer. She was an intelligent young woman who possessed a quiet confidence and maturity beyond her years. She spent many years mentoring apprentices within the circle, and her peers thought so highly of her that she was asked to be first enchanter, Irving's successor, but she refused, saying she had no desire to work in the upper echelons. When word reached the tower of King Caelan's call to arms, Wynn volunteered to go to Ostagar. Keeper Zathrian. Yeah, we're getting there. Even with all our magic and skill, we only delay the inevitable. It is said the elves lived in Ferelden long before any others set foot there, and though most of their knowledge has been lost, it falls to the keeper of each clan to preserve what they have. Zathrian is an old, severe elf with little love for outsiders, but his clan is facing a more trying enemy than most. Long ago, in retribution for an attack against his clan, he unleashed a terrible curse. He summoned his spirit into this world and set it upon the humans who had wronged him. The spirit did not simply slaughter Zathrian's enemies, it transformed him into monstrous beasts. In time, however, the werewolves he had created regained their minds, and they sought out the one responsible for the suffering, turning the curse upon Zathrian's own people. At the urging of the Lady of the Forest, Tuki persuaded Zathrian to give up his own life, returning the werewolves to their human forms and saving the elves who had been inflicted with the curse. Severon! Between the Deventer Imperium and Ravain and the Free Marches sits the nation of Antiva. Although it possesses few resources of its own, Antiva's location makes it a center for trade in the north, and the capital, Antiva City, is the wealthiest in the world. Antiva has virtually no army. The monarchy is too weak to support one. Most Antivans would be hard-pressed even to name the current king, as the true power lies in the hands of the dozen merchant princes, each with a personal army, and each locked in a constant struggle for power against all the others. Anyone would think that Antiva would be a ripe target for invasion by one of her neighbors, but even the Kunari leave Antiva alone for one very good reason: the House of Crows. The most efficient, most feared, and most expensive guild of assassins in the world calls Antiva their home, and their reputation alone defends the borders. Zevron was the crow contracted by Loyain to assassinate Alistair and Tuki. One failed attempt later, however, he found himself at the mercy of his would-be victims. They showed him unexpected mercy, and in return he swore to aid the Wardens on their quest to end the Blight. Zevron shows an affinity for the finer things in life, hardly surprising for an Antivan crow, but his appreciation can be more poetic than he lets on. A simple bar of refined silver or gold, uncomplicated by a craftsman hammer, is elegantly valuable. Witherfang is, according to the keeper Zathrian, a wolf. He is no ordinary wolf, however. He is a wolf possessed by a powerful spirit, the source of the werewolf curse that plagues the Brazilian forest. While Witherfang is hundreds of years old and very powerful in his own right, the only way to end his curse is to cut out his heart and bring it to Zathrian. It appears that Witherfang has two sides as nature does. One is the wolf, savage and male. The other is the Lady of the Forest, gentle and female. Witherfang is both beast and beauty, terrible and peace-loving. The lady has guided the werewolves of the Brazilian forest to come to peace with their nature as she has. Oh my god. Well, I did say I would do this. Oh my god. Looks like this episode's all it's going to be is me reading Codex entries. Oh. What can you do?
Just print a book. That's all I say.
I know. I've done them all except this. Books and songs. There's a bunch of them.
You gonna sing them?
Huh?
You gonna sing them?
No. They're just books mostly. I don't know why it says songs. There's very few, I don't think any of them are songs.
Ballad is a song.
No. I'm not singing it. The wind that stirs. Aveline was born to an Orlesian farmer near the city of Hallam-Shiral, an early stage of Storm Age. She was a large and ugly baby, and her father had hoped for a boy. Not wanting another mouth to feed, the father left Aveline in the woods to die for exposure, but a traveling band of Dalish elves came upon the crying child. The elves took her into their clan and raised her as their own. They taught her archery, dueling, and survival skills. When she came of age, she was larger and stronger than most women, let alone elven women. Her adopted parents knew that she was a fine warrior, so they encouraged her to enter a human tournament in nearby Monstesamard. But women were not permitted to join the knighthood in Orlais, nor to compete in a tournament, so Aveline joined the tournament as a man. Her clan forged a suit of armor with a full helm and gave her an ironbark sword with the finest quality. Aveline entered the competition, claiming to be a knight of Antiva. She refused to doff her helmet even during the archery competition, and sure enough, Aveline bested many other knights, until in the grand melee, she came upon... Kaleva, a knight who served the emperor, was considered the finest in the land. Kaleva was determined not to be beaten, and struck swiftly and strongly. As Aveline matched each of his blows, Kaleva grew ever more frustrated. Finally, in desperation, he tipped Aveline and threw her to the ground. The blow knocked her helm from her head, and Kaleva was shamed. He called to have the competition declared invalid, but the crowd booed and jeered. In anger, Kalwyn turned and slew Aveline as she lay helpless. The son of Prince Freyan was also present at the tourney. He too had been beaten by Aveline, but he recognized her skill and bravery, and was saddened by the injustice of her death. Upon rising to the emperor's seat in 744, Freyan abolished the law that disallowed women from joining the Orlesian knighthood, and posthumously knighted Aveline. Although women in Orlesian knighthood are still a rarity today, all those who do become knights revere Aveline as their patron. Sweet. The wind that stirs, their shallow graves carries their song. Across the lands, heed our words, hear our cry. The grey are sworn, in peace we lie. Heed our words, hear our cry. Our names are recalled, we cannot die. When darkness comes and swallows light, heed our words, and we shall rise. Said to have been written after the Battle of Aslay, when it ended with the fourth blight. Oh. Meditations and odes to beats. These may be faster than normal if they're all going to be like this. O fair damsel of the garden, our less o honeysuckle rose, I humbly beg your gracious pardon for the offense from that here rose. Surely your work is far too vital to be interrupted by one like me. I am in no way entitled to earn the notice of a honeybee. I was a fool to pluck that flower for my lady fair. Oh, my honor, I swear, to bring dozens more within the hour, if you let me leave to try. Listen, traveler, if you'd walk the garden past some spring, mind that you don't trespass, for the gardeners do sting. Anonymous. Interesting. Just an ode to bees. Adventures of the Black Fox. Born Lord Remy Vascal in 863, blessed, a Black Fox was a dashing thief and rogue who went on to inspire so many tales of his exploits that it is nearly impossible to determine today which is true and which are merely fabricated legend. Despite coming from nobility, has become something of a hero to the people. His initial exploits involved ridiculing the tyrannical and powerful Lord of Val Shiren. Wearing a mask, he would appear in public, disrupt the Lord's plans to the point the Lord angrily put a huge bounty on his life. This cunning Black Fox, origin of the nickname, was which struck at the primary bounty hunter who took the job. Corellis ended up becoming Remy's lifelong partner in crime, only after nearly killing him several times. is one of the most popular tales told in taverns today. The story is often exaggerated to make Remy appear initially buffoonish until Corollas becomes so furious. Alright! Nova! Thank you for the raid. Now you're turning it back around because I know you raided me. I raided you, but thank you. Hello, welcome! Welcome. We are reading some Codex entries, so thank you guys for coming in. Thank you for coming in with Genova's raid. I raided her earlier, so I guess it comes back around. But I like to read Codex entries, give some background lore for everyone, so that's what I'm doing. Until Corollas became so furious at the Black Fox's inexplicable ability to survive that the cunning Remy gained the upper hand, which expresses Corollas so much that the bounty hunter joined him. Returning the love, yep. I noticed that, yeah. After years of terrorizing the Lord's men and fooling his tax collectors, a favorite pastime, it's basically Robin Hood. According to Orlesian commoners, Remy was supposedly betrayed by his lover, Servana de Montfort, in some versions of the tale, a mage of the circle, no less, and captured. After more than a year of torture, Remy was rescued from prison by his compatriots, including a repentant Servana. And together they escaped Orlais. In this period of Remy's adventures, he appears almost everywhere in Thedas. As legend grew, more innkeepers and merchants were happy to claim that the Black Fox had visited their village or establishment before some legendary feat. The tales are to be believed. Remy led the Lord's men on a merry chase. He became embroiled by political intrigue in Navarre and was hunted by the crows of Antiva and then kidnapped by a powerful mage in Deventer. In each situation, Remy escaped at the last moment, foiled the evildoer, and improved life for the poor downtrodden. Then eventually, he rejoined his band of adventurers, moved on to the next land. His companions, Corollas and Servana, the wise dwarf Bolek, and the temperous knight Sir Clematis, have each spawned their own individual legend over the years. Oh yeah, start Alaska. Feel free, Alaska Thunderfinger. Feel free to start it up. Do the pokey catch. The stories all agree that at some point the Black Fox disappeared. He and his fellow adventurers voyaged into the heart of Arlathan Forest, seeking the sunken city of the elves, and never returned. Many more are the tales that expand on ultimately what happened to him in the forest and postulate on how they were somebody rescued. Adventures of the Black Fox. Holy Brazier. Oh, yeah. Oh, Alaska, thank you for following. Thank you. I'm surprised you followed, considering I'm reading Codex entries. Probably like, ugh. Fuck this guy. I'm out. Thank you for following. No. Oh. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. Oh, thank you. The brazier that stands atop the stairs in the great hall of our temple has always been something of a mystery to us. This is a brazier that created the beings we call the Ash Race. This is where Andraste's followers immolated themselves and became eternal guardians of her temple. I have painstakingly pieced together information from old books and from the tales and half-truths passed down by our forefathers. I believe I now understand the ritual used to create the race. The brazier was lit with a consecrated taper, its flame taken from the everlasting fire that long ago consumed Andraste herself. The chosen disciple would fast and pray for weeks, taking into his body nothing but a sip of water a day. When the disciple was finally ready, he would place in his mouth a flawless black pearl, step into the flames in ancient Deventer. Black pearls were thought to be magical, able to stop the soul from passing through the veil when held in the mouth at the moment of death. Thus, Andraste's disciples consigned themselves to the eternal flame. They became dust and ashes and rose again to protect the most beloved of the Maker. Sweet. Okay, that's that. Legend of Calenhad. Chapter 1. Prior to the crowning of King Calenhad, Ferelden was little more than a collection of independent Arlings and Tyrants that warred on each other constantly over petty matters. Calenhad was born in 510, exalted on the third son of the High Ever Merchant on hard times. He eventually sent to a distant cousin, a poor young knight named Sir Foranen, who made Calenhad his squire and dog handler. As the tale goes, Sir Foranen and his squire became caught up in one of the war's unity at the time. Arl Mirrodin was a strong but generally disliked man who was making a bid for kingship. Forinen's own lord, a young fool of an Arl named Tinador, no older than Calenhad, was besieged by Mirrodin's forces at his castle, today known as Westhill. When Mirrodin called Tyrden out to parley, the young Arl asked for a volunteer from amongst the squires, someone who could masquerade as Tinador in the parley party. Caladan kneeled before Tinador and asked for the honor. Much to Tinador and Sir Forinen's dismay, Caladan immediately identified himself to Arl Mirrodin. When asked by the Arl why he was here, Caladan explained that he had been asked to take place of his lord. The Arl asked if he planned to kill Tyrnador. Was Caladan willing to die in his lord's place as well? Caladan impressed Mirrodin and his allies by saying that he was. Mirrodin offered Caladan a place as his own squire, but Caladan refused, stating that if Mirrodin had planned on betraying the right of parley, he was no man of honor. Mirrodin's allies laughed at that, and Mirrodin himself decided that Caladan had a point. He allowed Calenhad to return to castle safely and launched his final assault. During the assault, both Tinador and Forinen were killed, but Calenhad found himself in one-on-one combat with Arl Mirrodin. In front of all Mirrodin's allies, Calenhad had defeated the Arl and commanded he call off his armies. The Arl asked Calenhad who he professed to serve now, if both his knight and his lord were dead. To much Calenhad replied that he would do as honor bade him, and for he had nothing else. You are not a man known for your honor, Calenhad said, but I believe you wish to be. You allowed me to live once, and so now I do the same for you. Perhaps if more of our people lived by honor, we would learn to trust each other and live together, and with that Calenhad withdrew his sword. I am humbled by your words, Al Mirrodin told Calenhad, dropping to one knee. To his allies he shouted that he now knew he would never be king, but he knew who should be, and with that Mirrodin pledged allegiance to Calenhad, whom he named Tyrion and ruler of Tinador's lands. Wow. Chapter 2. With the allegiance of Arl Mirrodin, Calenhad began his rise to greatness. Some of Mirrodin's allies also pledged allegiance, but most thought him foolhardy. A boy commoner was to lead them and become king. Over the years they followed, however, Calenhad would prove himself worthy of Mirrodin's trust with each victory. He won over more men to his command, and his reputation as a man of honor spread. Eventually, during his campaign against the lowland Bandorn, he met his most infamous friend and companion, the vaulted warrior Lady Shayna. Calenhad married the famously beautiful daughter of Mirrodin, Myron, and his firm belief in the ways of the Chantry became the staple of his court. In the time when the Chantry was still new in the lands and courts following Andraste held the majority of power in Ferelden, Calenhad began solidarity the nation and as one in line with other nations around it. This piety eventually won over to Calenhad those faithful in Ferelden who had been waiting for such a leader. With Lady Shayna at his side, Calenhad was unstoppable, and by 542 Exalted, the war for Ferelden had come down to one final battle against the collective forces of Simon. Tiernan of Denerim, and the most potent nobleman in the land, Calenhad persuaded the Circle of Magi to come to his aid, as well as the Ash Warriors in the Battle of White Valley. He famously defeated Tyr Simon and united the nation. During the battle, Simon nearly killed Calenhad, but Lady Shayna intervened and took the wound for him. Slaying Simon, Calenhad was crowned king in Denerim that year and Myron his queen, but he spent much of his months that followed nursing Lady Shayna back to health. Some water here. Drink some water. Throat's getting sore. King Calenhad's Ferelden was peaceful for a time, with Chantry spreading quickly under the king's guidance. Everywhere the king and queen went, they were surrounded by cheering crowds. The common folk celebrated Calenhad as one of their own, who had achieved the impossible, and trade opened up with many outside lands for the first time in Ferelden's existence. But as many such golden ages, it was not to last. Legend of Calenhad, Chapter 3. Calenhad's legends tell that Lady Shayna harbored a love for her king that went beyond friendship, a love that she kept secret of her sense of duty and honor. When offered a love potion by a witch disguise, a witch who would later turn out to be the vengeance-seeking sister of Arl Simon, Lady Shayna gave in temptation, used the potion on Calenhad, but Queen Myron discovered the two of them together that night and, broken-hearted, fled Dinnerum to return to her father. She told Myron everything, and he angrily threatened to revoke his support of Calenhad and began anew the Civil War. It is said that Lady Shayna felt remorseful at her manipulation of her best friend's heart and confessed her use of forbidden magic to the court. Although her life was forfeit, Calenhad forgave Lady Shayna for what she had done and refused to have her executed. Myron fiercely roused the other Arls against Calenhad and Lady Shayna, and it was not long before Ferelden stood on the brink of civil war once again. Against Calenhad's orders, Lady Shayna went alone to Myron to plead for peace and plead for her case, only to be found by Merrick and slain. Angered but also saddened, Calenhad challenged Merrick to an honor duel, a fight neither of them wanted but both knew was necessary. Myron was slain, the death of the king's greatest ally and important Arl, and too much for the young kingdom to bear. The Arls would not back down to their claims against Calenhad. The threat of civil war rose once again. Calenhad went to his wife one last time then, although none know what he said to her, and then he simply vanished. He left with Myron a proclamation abdicating his throne to favor of his son. His queen carried in her belly, who eventually ascended to the throne as King Waylon I. The king, credited with the establishment, the Theron dynasty lasted to this day. Calenhad would never reappear. Legend of Calenhad himself only grew over time as stories and sightings multiplied even long after the point when Calenhad would possibly still be alive. Some say he disappeared into Kukari wilds, or went to live with the dwarves, or even became a monk in a reclusive chantry order. The chantry named Calenhad one of the Anointed in 788 Storm. Calenhad's sword, Nementos, was left with Myron and became a symbol of Ferelden kingship over the next century. Rumors of its magical powers grew, and when it was lost in the ambush that killed King Vendren in 824 Blessed, it was seen as a great blow to the Theron line. Several false swords have appeared since that time, and never has the true sword surfaced. That's it. Story of Legend Calenhad. Carried in his journal. This is. And we don't have too far. We don't have too far. What do we need to get to? First Blight. Okay. Yep. 940, 45th day, 5th year of the reign of King Valtor. I have done it. The vision the ancestors gave me have come to fruition. Today a man sat up from my forge, a man of living stone and steel. I called him Gollum, for the legend of those giant statues animated by the dead. They are our future and our salvation. 940, 60th day. 5th year of the reign of King Valtor. It is a horrific process. Not every man could do such a thing and survive with his mind intact. I am honored that the ancestors believe I have the strength to bear this burden and forge Orzamar's defenders. Nothing so great may be achieved without sacrifice, nor may stone and steel walk without a spirit to animate them. 73rd day, 5th reign of King Valtor. I have asked for volunteers. Some few answered, men of the warrior caste, younger sons with no property, no chance for marriage. They want to defend Orzammar from the horrors these humans have unleashed. They want to live forever in the body stronger than the finest armor. They do not ask to speak with those who have gone before. I have put off saying this even in the pages, but I must say it now. My golems will be powered by their deaths. These brave warriors come to me naked as they were born. I dress them in a skin of armor, so large it makes the burliest looks no more than a babe. The anvil, their first and final cradle. We are surrounded by a mile of earth on all sides. No one hears the screams as I pour molten lyrium through the eye holes and mouth, every joint and chink in the armor. They silence quickly, but the smell lingers just as the trace of blood and the greater stench of hot metal. I must work fast. The armor is malleable now as I shape it with a hammer and tongs. It is not long before it moves beneath my hands, writhing and twisting with every blow. It speaks again now, a low moan, but I have learned to tune it out. I cannot afford no error in this craft. There could be no melted slag blinding the eyes, nor any unhewn bit of granite shackling the leg. They moan at my work, but would they rather be broken, crippled? Those I have spoken to tell me of pain, but could they see themselves? they would see perfection. Wow. Excuse me. Whew. History of the Chantry. Chapter 1. The first blight devastated the Deventer Imperium. Not only had the Darkspawn ravaged the countryside, but Deventer citizens had to face the fact that their own gods had turned against them. Dumat, the old god once known as the Dragon of Silence, had risen to silence the world. Despite the frenzied pleas for help, the other old gods did nothing. The people of Imperium began to question their faith, murdering priests and burning temples to punish their gods for not returning to help. In those days, even after the devastation of the First Blight, the Imperium stretched across the known world, fringed with barbarian tribes. The Imperium was well prepared for invasions, attacks from without, fitting then that the story of its downfall begins from within. The people of the far northern and eastern reaches of the Imperium rose up against their powerful overlords in the rebellion. The Deventer Magisters summoned demons to put down these small rebellions, leaving corpses to burn as examples to all who dare revolt. The Imperium began to tear itself apart from within, throngs of angry and disillusioned citizens doing what centuries of opposing armies could not. But the Magisters were confident in their power. They could not imagine a surviving a blight only be destroyed by their own subjects. Even after the blight, Deventer commanded an army larger than any other organized nation in Thedas, but that army was scattered and its morale dwindling. The ruin of Deventer was such that the Almari barbarians, who had spread their clans and holds over the wilderness of the Ferelden out to the far southeast edge of Imperium, saw weakness in their enemy, and after an age of oppression, embarked on a campaign not only to free their own lands, but to bring down mighty Deventer as well. The leaders of that blessed campaign were the great barbarian warlord Mathraf and his wife Andraste, the greatest ambitions would change the world forever. Boy. Chapter 2. When the prophet Andraste and her husband Mathraf arrived at the head of their barbarian horde, southern Deventer was thrown into chaos. The Imperium had defended against invasions in the past, but now they stood without the protection of their gods, with their army in tatters and their country devastated by the blight. Many felt that the timing of the invasion was yet another of Maker's miracles in Andraste's campaign to spread his divine word. Andraste was more than simply the wife of a warlord. After all, she was also the betrothed of the Maker. Enraptured by the melodic song of her voice as she sang to the heavens for guidance, the Maker himself appeared to Andraste, proposed that she come with him, leaving behind the flawed world of humanity. In her wisdom, Andraste pleaded with the Maker to return to his people and create the paradise in the world of men. The Maker agreed, but only if all the world would turn away from the worship of false god and accept the Maker's divine commandments. Armed with the knowledge of the one true God, Andraste began the exhausted march through the weakened Imperium. I've watched this. I've read this. Yes, I have read this. Okay. I've read the history of the Chantry. And I know because I chatted with... Yeah, I've already read the history of the Chantry. I'm sorry, guys. In the days of the rising of Zazarkil, this is the tale of Elorian. The Dark Ones covered every corner of the land. The Archdemon drove all the nations of the world before him, Shimlin and Elven alike. In the far north, where the hills wander the plains, and the earth is eternally baked beneath the uncaring sun, the lands which the Shimlin call Anderfels, a clan of our people, lived struggling to survive the blight. Elorian was their keeper, a hunter in his younger days. Crafty as a wolf, he led his people always just ahead of the Darkspawn who chased them. But the old hunter knew even Hala cannot run forever. They must turn and fight or be run down. At the foot of Merdane, the Darkspawn cornered Elorian's clan. That night the moon was strangled by clouds, the earth concealed by a dread mist that rose out of nowhere, so the Elven could not tell up from down. In the confusion, the Darkspawn attacked. But Elorian had prepared for them. All around the camp, the hunters had sown dry grass, brush, and brambles. With the sound of rustling footfalls began, Elorian and other Hathran called upon old magic. They struck out with lightning through the bolts, hissed the Darkspawn. Yet their targets all the same. The sea of Kingland lit, and not one of the dark creatures made it through the fire to reach Elorian's clan. Oh, smart. Ooh. I think I read a very chewed and moist book. Yeah, it's actually one that your dog brings you Actually, I don't know if... I'm just going to go back to chapter 2 just to make sure. Armed with the knowledge of the one true God, Andraste began the exalted march into the weakened Imperium. One of the Maker's commandments that magic should serve man rather than rule over him was honey to the souls of the downtrodden of Deventer who lived under the thumbs of the Magisters. Word of Andraste's exalted march, of her miracles and military successes, spread far and wide. Those in the Imperium who felt the old gods had abandoned them eagerly listened to the words of the Maker. Those throngs of restless citizens that destroyed temples now did so in the name of the Maker and his prophet Andraste. As Mafraf's armies conquered the lands of South Deventer, so did Andraste's words conquer hearts. It is said that the Maker smiled on the world at the Battle of Valerian Fields, in which the forces of Mafraf challenged and defeated the greatest army Deventer could muster. The southern reaches of the mighty Imperium now lay at the mercy of the barbarians. Faith in the Maker, bolstered in such miracles, threatened to shake the foundations of the Imperium apart. Of course, the human heart is more powerful than the greatest weapon, and when wounded, is capable of the blackest of deeds. Chapter 3. It is said that at the Battle of Valerian Fields, Mafraf stood and looked out over his armies he had conquered in southern reaches of the greatest empire the world had ever known, and built splintered barbarians into a force to be feared. With pride in his heart, he turned to congratulate his men and found that they had turned from him. Mafraf fell to the evil of jealousy. After all he had done, his wife was the one to receive all the glory. He saw his wife power and influence and tired of his place as second husband below the Maker, his heart swelled with fury. If he had conquered just to have his wife wrestled from him by a forgotten god and a legion of faith-hungry rabble, then perhaps this war was not worth the trouble. Here, history and the chant of light come apart. History tells us that Mafraf looked north into the central Imperium, saw nothing but more war against a rapidly regrouping army, and he despaired. Chant of Light holds that Mafraf chafed with jealousy of the Maker and jealousy of the glory that Andraste received, although it was he who led the armies. Mafraf traveled to the imperial capital of Minrathous to speak with the Archon Hessarian. There he offered up his wife to the Imperium in return for a truce that would end hostilities once and for all. The Archon, eager to put down the voice of the prophet that stirred his own people against him, agreed. Mafraf led Andraste into an ambush where she was captured by Imperial agents, putting an end to her exalted march. Crowds of loyalists stood in the central square of Minrathous to watch Andraste's execution. By command of the Archon, she was burned at the stake, in which the Imperium believed to be the most painful punishment imaginable. According to the Chantry, however, Andraste was instead purified and made whole by the flames, ascending to life at her Maker's side. By all accounts, there was only silence when the expected screams at the sight of the prophet burning. The crowds were filled with a profound guilt, as they had participated in a great blasphemy. The Archon himself drew his sword and thrust it into the prophet's heart, ending her torment, leaving those assembled to consider the weight of what they had seen. Whereas the execution of Andraste was meant to be a symbol of defeat for the faith of the Maker, in truth, it all but sealed the fate of the worship of the old gods and paved the way for the spread of the Maker's chant. Very similar to Christianity. Very similar. Basically drawn from it. The crowds present at the death of Andraste were right to feel despair. It is believed that the prophet's execution angered the Maker, and he turned his back on humanity once more, leaving the people of Thedas to suffer in the dark. In those dark times, mankind scrambled for a light, any light. Some found comfort in demonic cults that promised power and riches in return for worship. Others prayed to the old gods for forgiveness, begging the great dragons to return to the world. Still others fell so low as to worship the Darkspawn, forming vile cults dedicated to the exaltation of evil in the purest form. It is said that the world wept as its people begged for a savior who would not come. Andraste's followers, however, did not abandon her teachings when she died. The cults of Andraste rescued her sacred ashes from the courtyard of Minrathous. After her execution, stealing them away into a secret temple. The location of that temple has long been lost, but the ashes of Andraste served as a symbol of enduring nature of the fate in the Maker that the humanity could earn the Maker's forgiveness despite his grievous insult to him. With time, the cult of Andraste spread and grew, and the chant of light took form. Sing this chant in the four corners of Thedas, it is said, and the world will gain the Maker's attention at last. As the chant of light spread, the cults of Andraste became known as the Andrastian Chantry. Those who converted to the Chantry's beliefs found its mission to spread Andraste's word. There were many converts, including powerful people in Imperium and in the city-states of what is now Orlais. Such was the power of the Maker's word that the young King Drakon undertook a series of exalted marches meant to unite the city-states and create an empire solely dedicated to the Maker's will. The Orlesian Empire became the seat of the Chantry's power, the Grand Cathedral in Val-Royeaux, the source of the movement that birthed the organization Chantry as we know it today. Drakon, by then, Emperor Drakon I, created the Circle of Magi, the Order of Templars, and the Holy Office of the Divine. Many within the Chantry revere him nearly as equals with Andraste herself. The modern Chantry is a thing of faith and beauty, but is also a house of necessity, protecting Thedas from the powerful forces that do it harm. Where the Great Wardens protect the world from the blights, the Chantry protects mankind from itself. Most of all, the Chantry works to earn the Maker's forgiveness, so that one day he would return and transform the world into the paradise it was always meant to be. Dane and the Werewolf. Let me sing of heroes, honor lost and found, of monsters, men in all forms, of Dane, hunter without peer, feared by the forests of Ferelden, who one autumn morn spied a hare of pure white and beam of warmest sun, a prize for a huntsman's spear. Though the greenwood they ran, hart and hunter, bringing the stag to spear at last a long forgotten grove, heedless that the chase had wakened to hunger, and the golden wood, a werewolf, a creature with mind of man, lured by the hunt and come forth to lay claim to the heart, at rightful tribute drawn by scent of cooling blood. In the silence the two hunters held, Dane, spear-armed against the wolf with all his brood, knew with sinking heart he was lost, steeled by winding roads of the fade. Then the beast spoke, human-like in voice, "You have taken this stag from my woods and my pack, but nothing comes without cost." The pack circled ever closer, and he, who felled boars and bears with his bright blade, knew fear. They spoke his name in roars, like gravestones hovering a beast's bargain. Die here, huntsman, alone and forgotten, or take my place amongst the wolves, as I take your place amongst men. Thus was the bargain struck, and Dane, the wolf pack served in wolven form, and werewolf to his family sped as Dane. 1 year and a day all told, but some things cannot be repent, some coinage cannot be unspent, when hearts are wagered a fissure rent. Oh. Death of a Templar. Okay. The dry, dusty earth swallows up salty drops that splatter its surface. A tiny insect pauses, sensing the vibrations and scurrying off, leaving behind the invisible enemy as the drops fall. The dark circles merge together, expressing a mirror to their creator. The primal emotions of bloodlust and sorrow bend into a lethal cocktail that breaks the strongest of men. The jurisdiction of strength must be left to spirit, not arm nor chest. Only the wisest turn to his inner sanctuary, a partition, the mind from all-consuming madness. Seductive voices whispering promise of glory, waiting for the weaker path of flesh, bringing a death far worse than that of hot lead or steel. These blank, hollow promises will echo the unfathomable eternally. Living comfortably amongst material possessions, it is easy to misunderstand the true meaning of uncomfortable hate. Uncontrollable hate. Failing to understand the power of fighting against pure, unfaltering beliefs, against foes that listen only to their soul, uncontrollable hate, influenced and thus removed from innocence. The scar is permanent and eternal. I understand completely if no one's watching this anymore. I'm losing my mind, but I'm too far to stop. Like, I've done all of it, except of these few lines. And I want to stop, but I'm so close to being caught up. Okay. I can do it. The rain, now red, feeds the debt owed for actions past, seeking further into the earth as the mind draws closer. What is it that drew himself to the situation? The mind ebbs and parts to a lingering memory of true innocence. He entered war as a newborn, enters the world unknowing of both horrors and light of the maker that will save him. The sound of metal sliding along leather comes from above him. From the second he was born to his soon-be dying breath, his mind was processing and analyzing knowledge and experiences. It is true that he thought he could be wise in his own eyes, but only the most humble recognizes that he knows very little. Bias, speculation, and all of false pretenses make way to the sound of the sweeping steel, and then finally his soul, as ready as his eyes dry from the final understanding, enters his promise of its purest form. I guess that was kind of like a Shakespearean drama of this. Most of it is unintelligible. Day 42. I begin to suspect that we are being manipulated, as if some unseen hand far above us. Anyways, I hear the sound of clicking. Click, click, click. Several pages are missing, and much of the ink or remaining pages have run together. And then told them I wouldn't take any cheese unless it came directly from the rear of mother's hand. Mud or something similar soaked the pages. My mother told me I was special. I never knew how right she was. It was Usaris. I swear it. It looked like a carving in the Arl's drawing room. I sent it to the circle to verify, but I haven't heard. What is Usaris? Because we got Usaris from the circle. The undead exhumed, born from the shallowest graves, mine from the living. By Paragon Langchikar, 744 Storm. Do you like fried mush and nug? I do not like them, Mr. Klug. Okay, so this is, I remember this, and I loved it. I loved it. This is Dwarven Dr. Seuss. Can't make this up. He was so good, he's a paragon. Okay, that's what cracks me up. Okay, you'll love this one. Okay. Do you like fried mush and nug? I do not like them, Mr. Klug. I do not like fried mush and nug. Would you eat them on a rug? If you eat them, well, you'll get a hug. I would not eat them on a rug. For you, I will not want a hug. Then would you drink them from the nug? If you drink them from the jug, come on, give them a chug. I would not drink them from a jug. I would rather eat a slimy slug. Would you eat them with a bug? Would you share them with a thug? I would not share them with the thug. I would not eat them with the bug. Not for a hug, not on a rug. For jug, I will not chug. Come on now, Mr. Klug. Are you on some kind of drug? Eat them in this hole I dug. Eat them. Don't just shrug. I had it, Mr. Klug. Down in the hole you dug. Down with the thug and the slug and the bug. By Paragon Seuss. I love it. I love that they add that in there. Paragon Seuss. 212 Glory. Never surrender. Dwarves bug may be lukewarm but vital as ore. Paragon Lysine Car. There once was a miner of lyrium whose face looked Pyrenium. The dead got him too, not much he could do with a face like he was a shoo-in. But man, Paragon Seuss, that gets me. I love it. Love it. Feast Day Fish. Naturally falls open to this page. Anything in here? See, they're just eggs. Beaten eggs, sliced eggs. Half pound of poached mackerel. Nothing really weird, just normal. First Blight. Chapter 1. This is all that's left. And I'm done. Thedas is a land of fierce diversity. From the assassin princes of Antiva to the fated griffins of the Anderfels. But in my travels I found one tale that unites the people of this land. It is a story of pride and damnation, and although the telling differs, the essence of the tale remains the same. At the height of its power, the Defenter Imperium stretched over much of Thedas, uniting the known world under the rule of the tyrannical Magisters. It is said that the old gods, whom the Magisters worshipped, gave them the knowledge of blood magic, and the Magisters use this forbidden power to cement their rule. The blood of elven slaves and humans alike ran down imperial altars to fuel Magister greed, and tales of their excesses so horrifying that one can only be grateful that blood magic is prohibited today. But all that stands tall must eventually fall. Perhaps they foresaw their ruin, or perhaps their pride knew no bounds. But whatever the reason, the Magisters dared to open a magical portal into the Golden City, at the heart of the Fade. They sought to usurp the Maker's throne, long left unattended in the Golden City, after the Maker turned his back on his creations. They would storm heaven itself with their power and become as gods. That is what the Chantry, in its oft exercised tendency to understate, refers to as the second sin. According to the most versions of the tale, the Magisters did indeed reach the Golden City and walked into the home of the Maker, where no living being before them had dared, or been able to, tread. But humanity is not meant to walk in heaven. The Magisters were wicked with pride and other sins, and their presence tainted the Golden City. What once was a perfect, holy citadel became twisted home of darkness and nightmares. The Magisters were expelled back through their gateway, cursed for their treachery, as the Golden City had been tainted. So the Magisters twisted and transformed into things of darkness, the very first of the Darkspawn. The Golden City, once a shining beacon at the heart of the Fade, became the Black City, a reminder of all man's pride has a cost. People today have little concept of consequences of the second sin. This is chapter 2. Oh, believe me when I say that when asked pious, chantry-going folk will curse the use of foul magic, spitting and snapping their fingers, but none live today who actually remember the horror that was unleashed so very long ago. Whatever records may have existed, regrettably, did not survive the chaos and ignorance that was to follow. We have only the tales of survivors handed down through the murky ages and the dogma of the Chantry to instruct us, and that is precious little indeed. I believe I am not understating when I say that the second sin unleashed the bane of all life upon Thedas. The Darkspawn are more virulent than the worst plague, the heartless force of nature that came into our world like an ill wind. We know from accounts of later blights, as these Darkspawn invasions came to be called, never have more appropriate name existed, that the Darkspawn spread disease and famine wherever they tread. The earth itself is corrupted by their presence, sky rolling with angry black clouds. I do not exaggerate, my friends, when I say that a mass gathering of Darkspawn is an omen of dread cataclysm. It is said that those cursed Magisters who became the first Darkspawn scratched at the very earth to find solace in the darkness of the Dwarven deep roads, and there in the shadows they multiplied, wherever by intelligent design or by some last vestige of worship in their minds. They attempted to locate the gods they'd once served. They found what they sought, Dumat, first among the old gods, known as the Dragon of Silence, before the Maker imprisoned him and all his brethren beneath the earth for the first sin, usurping the Maker's place in mankind's heart. The slumbering dragon awoke, freed from the Maker's prison by his twisted followers, and became corrupted itself. Dumat was transformed into the first archdemon. His great and terrible power given will by a rotting, unholy mind. With the Darkspawn horde following, Dumat rose and took wing in the skies once again, bringing ruin to the world the Maker had created. The old god had become the eye of a dark storm that would ravage the entire world. 2. 3. That was chapter 2. This is chapter 3. The world during the First Blight was different from the world we know today. Aside from the civilized rule of the Imperium, humans as a race were largely barbarous, and splintered, divided into clans and tribes, and squabbling amongst themselves for resources. At the same time, deep beneath Thedas' great mountain ranges spanned a dwarven culture as organized and advanced as ours was primitive. As the Darkspawn bubbled up to the surface from their underground layers, mankind first buckled, then fought back. The armies of Deventer attempted to face down the multitudes of twisted creatures and the horrified rotting of the land around them, but they could not be everywhere at once. Human history remembers the First Blight at a time of terrible devastation, and those stories are accurate, but in our arrogance we often forget the price paid by the dwarves in the isolated mountain kingdoms. Dwarves face far greater hordes than humanity as the Darkspawn challenged them for the control of the underground. Despite the might and technology the dwarves brought to bear, the savage Darkspawn tore through them, first destroying the more remote tags before swallowing up entire kingdoms. Think of it, an entire civilization lost in the space of decades compared to the near genocide that the dwarves face. What we humans call the First Blight must seem like a mere skirmish against the Darkspawn. The Dwarven's lands always bore the brunt of the fighting and the majority of the sacrifices. 4 dwarven kingdoms finally managed to combine their might and fight back. That cooperation saved them, but for the rest of their lands it was too late. The Darkspawn had taken the deep roads, the majestic underground passages that linked the dwarven lands throughout Thedas. The Darkspawn could now attack anywhere on the surface through these tunnels. Humanity simply was not prepared for such an onslaught. It was clear that the warfare we knew would not avail us. We had to find a new way to fight. Thus came our salvation. The Great Wardens were born. Founded at Weissaut Fortress in the Anderfels, the Grey Wardens offered humanity hope in its darkest hour. Veterans of decades of battle within the Darkspawn came together, and the best among them pledged to do... God damn it, I need to stop doing that. The best amongst them pledged to do whatever was necessary to stem the tide of darkness that swept across the land. These great humans, elves, and dwarves pooled their knowledge of enemy and formed a united front to put a stop to the Archdemon's rampage. And stop it they did. Ballads are still sung today of the first Grey Warden charge into the waves of Darkspawn at the city of Nordbotten, each warden facing 10 or 20 Darkspawn at a time. Squadrons of Grey Wardens mounted on their mighty griffins, soaring through the blackened skies and battling the terrible Archdemon with spear and spell. Oh, what a sight it must have been. Incredibly, the Grey Wardens won that first battle. They raised their arms in victory, and suddenly there was hope. The Grey Wardens led the lands of men and the last storied defenders of dwarven halls against the hordes of Archdemon, Ardumat, for the next 100 years, gaining and losing ground but never backing away. From all over Thedas, they recruited whoever possessed the skill and strength to raise the Grey Warden banner, making no distinction between elven, slave, and or human nobleman. Finally, nearly 2 centuries after the first god rose from earth, the Grey Wardens assembled the armies of men and dwarves at the Battle of Silent Fields, and it was then that Dumat finally fell and the First Blight ended. The Deventer Imperium would face a new challenge from the coming prophet Andraste. Thoughts of the Black grew distant. With Dumat's defeat, the Darkspawn were no longer considered a threat, but with the wisdom of hindsight, we know that conceit proved foolish indeed. The task of the Grey Wardens was far from over. Maker's first children. So, the Maker's first creation were the spirits, glorious beings that populated the many spires of the Golden City, and the Chant of Light says that they were revered the Maker with unquestioning devotion. The Maker, however, was dissatisfied. Although the spirits were like him, in that they could manipulate the ether and create from it, they did not do so. They had no urge to create, and even when instructed to do so, possessed no imagination to give their creations ingenuity or life. The Maker realized his own folly. He had created the spirits to resemble him in all but the one and most important way. They did not have a spark of the divine within them. He expelled all the spirits of the Golden City into the Fade and proceeded his next creation, life. The Maker created the world and living beings upon it, separated from the Fade by the veil. His new children would be unable to shape the world around them, and thus would need to struggle to survive. In return for their struggle, the Maker gave them the spark of the divine, a soul, and he watched the pleasure his creations flourished and showed all the ingenuity that he had hoped for. The spirits grew jealous of the living and coaxed them into the Fade when they slept. The spirits wished to know more of life, hoping to find a way to regain the Maker's favor. Though the eyes of the living, they experienced new concepts: love, fear, pain, and hope. The spirits reshaped the Fade to resemble the lives and concepts that they saw each spirit desperately trying to bring most dreamers to their own realm so they could vicariously possess a spark of divine through them. I do know the story of Levias Jorson. I didn't read it, but we had an Ash Warrior give the story of Levias Jorson, so we don't need to do that one. So I do know that. As the spirits grew in power, however, some of them became contemptuous of the living. There were spirits that saw the darkest parts of the dreamers. Their lands were places of torment and horror, and they knew that the living were strongly drawn to places that mirrored these dark parts themselves. These spirits questioned the Maker's wisdom and proclaimed the living inferior. They learned from the darkness they saw and became the first demons. Rage, hunger, sloth, desire, pride. These were the dark spirits of the soul that give demons their power, the hooks that they used to claw their way into the world of the living. It was demons that whispered into the minds of men, convincing them to turn from the Maker and worship false gods. They seek to possess all life as their due, forging kingdoms of nightmare and the fade in hopes of one day storming the walls of heaven itself. And the Maker despaired once again, for he had given the power of creation to his new children, and in return they created sin. Oh, this was not that long. Legion of Steel. Paragon Caridin vanished in the 11th year of the reign of King Valtor, and with the Paragon, the entire process of golem manufacture was lost. Expeditions were sent to the deep roads to track him, but the Darkspawn drove them all back. Finally, in the 2nd year of the reign of Queen Gaetha, 126 golems, the entire Legion of Steel was sent to recover the Paragon. None returned. The Shaper of Golems refused to support any further attempts to find Caridin, and the Paragon was officially declared dead. The Shaper had never recovered from the loss of an entire legion of golems, and never again allowed an all-golem regiment in the Deep Roads. In Uthanar. Okay, I'm not going to read that because that's all translated from the Elven tongue. Okay. Elder, your time has come. Now live with sorrow. Weary eyes need resting. Heart has done. Become gray and slow, and the waking sleep is freedom. We sing, rejoice, we tell the tales, we laugh and cry, we love one day. Okay. Alright. Yeah, already done that. 6 left. In praise of a humble nug. I once served a human some nug, and he proclaimed that it was like eating an unholy onion of pork and hair. Unholy union of pork and hair. The idea disturbed him, and so that he declined to finish his serving, and made himself content with some stale bread. Of course, this only goes to show that surfacers, human or otherwise, have tragically unrefined palates. The nug is surely the most delicious animal I have ever tasted. Only a dead man would not salivate at the thought of a tender morsel of roast nug melting in his mouth. The Paragon Varen, although his house has fallen, shall always be remembered for discovering the wonders of nug flesh. Admittedly, it was discovered only out of desperation when he was separated from his legion, lost in the deep roads of Relique, and he couldn't hold that, but we won't hold that against the good Paragon. While nug pancakes and nuggets, my own children love these, are the nug dishes one encounters most often, nug can be prepared in other interesting and elegant ways. The late King Angsar Adukin adored nug, seared on a hot metal plate and finished in the oven and dressed in a cream sauce flavored with, this actually sounds good, flavored with deep mushrooms. You must be careful when using the mushrooms from the deep roads because they often grow close to darkspawn bodies. They say that this is what gives them their unique flavor and intoxicating scent, but it also means consuming too many of that may result in curious afflictions of the mind. Alright, yeah. Honored chef of House Adukin. Traditional dwarven folk songs. There's literally only one. This is the only one. Okay. Nug sits in the mud. Nug wiggles his ears. You catch the nug, he slips away, gets to live another day. Nug sits in the mud. Nug wiggles his toes. You hook the nug, he slips away. Now the nug runs off to play. Nug sits in the mug. Nug wiggles his nose. You tickle the nug, he laughs away. Now the nug sits on my plate. Jesus. The weakness of mortal will is the great failing of all makers' children. We trade our honor as if it were the cheapest of currency. We do not understand what integrity is or what it is truly worth. From this ignorance, original sin was born. At such time, each of us has thought, what does it matter if I keep hold of my integrity? I am but one mortal. I am powerless. How blind we all are. The virtue of a single slave destroyed the Tevinter Imperium. The dishonor of one man drove the Maker from our sight. I tell you truly, nothing but the integrity of our hearts will win the love of the Maker back to us. It is all the power we shall ever possess to change the world for good or for evil. Not wrong. Journal of the Tranquil. This is emotionless, inanimate objects. Some laugh at me. I no longer mind. Once upon a time, I studied as they did. I learned under the tutelage of the enchanter, attempted to master the art of bending magic to my will, and while I did well enough, I know that I struggled. I saw the way the enchanter looked at me, the sidelong glances of worry and disappointment. While other apprentices were conjuring fire, I could barely light a candle. I was frightened of magic, and when I was a boy, my grandmother regaled me with tales of terrible Plymouth, the Witch of the Wild. She told me of the magisters and how their evil magic infected the world with the darkspawn. She told me of demons, and how they were drawn to the dreams of those who possessed magic like moths to a flame. She told me all these things because she said the talent ran in our family's blood. So it ran in mine. All my young life I dreaded the thought, prayed to the Maker that I would not so curse, but I knew otherwise. Deep in my heart I knew, when the Templars came to our home, I knew. The Mage's Tower was terrifying. Full of secrets and danger, the Templars glared at me, so I could spring full into abomination before their very eyes. My enchanter patiently attempted to teach me to marshal my willpower. My only defense, should a demon attempt to enslave me, but it was no use. How many nights did I cry myself to sleep in the dark and lonely place? Then my harrowing came at last, my final test. Face a demon, they said, or submit to the rite of tranquility. They will sever my connection to the Fade, and thus I will never dream, and no demon will ever touch me. But I would also be unable to do magic, and I would never feel any emotion ever again. Facing the demon was certain death, so my choice was easy. It was not so painful. Now I serve in other ways. We Tranquil manage the archives, we run the tower, purchase the supplies, and maintain the accounts. Our condition also allows us to use the magical element lyrium without ill effect, and thus we are the ones who enchant the magical items. We are the merchants who sell these items to those the circle permits, and the coin from those sales provides the circle's wealth. Thus, we Tranquil are vital. The young and old may stare at me, ill at ease, but those will be worse off without me. They may think me a failure, but there is no horror for me now. I feel no fear of what I am. The shadows are merely shadows, and I am content. Trian's journal. This is Balin's older brother that he killed, and blamed it on you if you were also the middle child. Balin's the youngest, you were the middle child if you're a Dwarven noble storyline. 21 for Ventus. Noticed Gorham running around trying to get pieces of my sibling's ceremonial armor ready for the feast. Stopped him and asked him how preparations are going. I'm the sibling he's talking about. The Great Warden is a sibling if you're the dwarf noble. Stopped him and asked how preparations were going. He mentioned that one of the bracers had a spot of tarnish on it. Was quite impressed at his dedication. He is most loyal to our family. Proventus was on my way to discuss the treaty with father when came another messenger waiting in the hall. On being asked why he was loitering about the royal palace, he mumbled something about having a gift for the new commander, and asked me, begged almost, to pass along some object to other my sibling. Me. The heir to the throne of Orzammar does not run errands for a messenger. Must have been new on the job. Had him thrown out, however, still reeling from the gall of it. Learned later that Balin had told the messenger that the quickest way to get things to our siblings was through me, and had made him wait until I came by. So unseemly for the Prince of Orzammar to play some tricks, he needs to grow up and understand that as royalty, he has responsibilities. Found Balin's little playmate, again, lurking about the corridors outside his bedroom this morning. Must have been trying to steal something, or already had. Bosom seemed fuller than most decent ladies. Some jewels hidden in the bodice. Anyway, pretended not to see her. Would have been awkward otherwise, which Balin would keep her confined to his room. He must have her around. Little brother is too concerned with fun and pleasure, and not serious enough about his duties as prince. Must talk to him about discipline, won't have time. Unfortunately, much too busy with many tasks father has laid upon my shoulders. Remember to send small token of gratitude to Hyala Helmi. Alliance between Helmi and Iduken must be kept strong. Lady Jaylia Helmi will, of course, accept proposal of marriage, since we'll be king sooner or later, but never hurts to be polite and keep the lady happy. Hear that there are some surfacers selling silks. May will send second out for something nice. J. Leah's favorite color, turquoise. Oh. Heard about there being provings held in our siblings' honor. They did not have provings for me in my first commission, and I'm the heir. What is going on? Must go watch these provings and make presence felt. Wizamar must not forget that I am there to be her next king. Yeah, and that's actually like the start of the beginning storyline of the Dwarven noble. So, cautionary tales for the adventurous. This is the last one, guys. It was then that he realized he wasn't alone. The abandoned camp in front of him was unbelievably welcoming. Like a mirage, the fire felt like a warm hand grabbing his heart. It reminded him of a previous life so long ago when he was happy, running on the sunflower fields with his boy, the sun on his face, laying next to the fireplace with his beautiful wife in his arms. He felt a sharp pain in his heart. His thoughts shifted to that day when everything changed. Blood was everywhere. He held the body of his dead wife in his arms around him. The ashes of his burned house fell like snow. The stench was horrible. It smelled like darkspawn. Grabbed his axe, touched the icy cold hands of his boy, and left. He would kill them. He would kill them all. The pain in his heart was unbearable. He opened his eyes and saw the second most terrifying thing he would see in his life. A shadowy wraith leaning over him, leeching his life away around him. The camp was gone, replaced by something familiar, almost peaceful. Bones, death, and despair. He wondered if all his life had been an illusion. If he'd ever had a family for a brief moment, he felt relief. You can't lose something you never had, but being this close to death brought clarity. He knew it was real. Everything else was the illusion. He could see a smile on his torn face. He had been waiting for this moment for a long, long time. He lifted his weak arms, grasping the demon's face, and kissed it. It felt like kissing a cloud made of sand and dust. Suddenly all sorrow left him, and with it the last bit of life he had. Before his limp body hit the ground, it was all over. He was finally free. Guys, I just fucking did it. We're done! We're done. Any new Codex entries, I'll read it, but right now, we've got them. We're good. Holy shit. Can't say I'm not dedicated to the story. Is that the end of it? Was this the end of it? Okay, so this was it.
How wonderful!
These are the wounded soldiers. Storm Chaser. Oh, I remember that actually is really good. But not, it's really good, but it's not as good as Corruption, obviously.
Help me! I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come. We're running out of bandages here. There are supplies on the other side of the courtyard. Bring bandages, hurry!
We can do that.
It appears we will need to fight it like a time.
I'm gonna remove Miami's helmet. So he's like Seer. Up and it glitched out. Everybody's still watching. I'm actually playing the game now. But anyways, listening. I'm actually playing the game. Wait for these to load.
I'll come back when it's safe, sir. Oh, these will help greatly. Thank you.
Was that the keep?
Unbelievable. The keep has been overwhelmed. How did the Wardens not sense the Darkspawn coming? I don't understand it. Not many. A dozen, perhaps? There are other soldiers who came with them, however. For the Darkspawn to have ambushed the keep so effectively, I didn't know they were capable of such a thing. Right. They won't get away with this.
Gotta have confidence.
Time for more Darkspawn, I see. As you
I didn't do it. Oh, don't get me wrong, I'm not broken up about them dying, to be perfectly honest. Biff there made the funniest gurgle when he went down.
Who are you supposed to be?
I am Anders, at your service, mage and wanted apostate.
An apostate? At Vigil's Keep?
You weren't here when we arrived. I'm sure I would have remembered such a lovely woman as yourself. We were just stopping here on our way back to the tower. Just a short rest, they said, and now they're dead. Such a shame. So they kept saying, although come to think of it, there's no real way to know for sure, is there? The Templars captured me and were taking me back, and then, you know, Darkspawn attacked. Could be a sign, yes? Isn't it, though? The Maker moves in mysterious ways. Well, tell you what, I'll help you and we can discuss what comes later. Later, once all these bastards are properly put down, yes?
Well, now we got answers. Sorry about that, guys.
Get to safety, quickly!
I think I can go, like, do a couple more things, I think, over here. I want to say... I can't go that way. Can I go up here?
Cannot be.
Nope. Okay. Not possible to pick. That was the only path I can go. Okay. Fair enough.
Time for more darkspawn, I see.
Get rid of the emissary. Damn it! Anders. Most people enjoy being kicked in the head, to be woken up each morning. Me, I'm just so picky. Anders is an apostate mage. He was arrested by Templars who intended to cart him to the Circle Tower. Virgil's keep was to be a short stop on their long journey. Unfortunately, the keep was attacked just as the group arrived, and Anders was found standing among the bodies of his captors. He insists they were killed by Darkspawn. Regardless, Anders joined Tuki to defeat the Darkspawn in Virgil's keep. Okay. There's that. There we go. Interior.
Delighted.
Oh, so there's that. So that's a shortcut. Okay. Sweet. God, I'm our level 23. Jesus.
Oh, we're scared now. Don't come over here. Ha! It'll take more than that to kill us, beasties. Come again if you dare.
Come, let's have a meal. Are we in a hurry? As you desire. Are we going to come back? Make her have mercy!
Quick, get yourselves to safety.
Thank you, Maker.
So
Emissary's already got the curse. There's the Emissary. Fuck him up. There we go. She didn't die, so didn't get injuries cured on her. Which is good. Very good. Office Barrier rune. If you notice, that looks like a different rune because that's actually an armor rune they introduced in this one. In this DLC. They introduced a lot. As you can see, I got a whole nother line of skills, 2 more specializations for every class, for mages, rogues, and yeah, they just added a bunch. Well, at least I stunned him just long enough for that till the end.
Get to safety, quickly! Make a bless you.
And you can it actually add some specializations you can do. I didn't look at them too much, but farther down you can do things like rune crafting. Added like you can craft runes now.
You again.
Need something? Don't mind me. 100th time.
Oh man, this
Quick,
thing.
get yourself
There
to
we go.
safety. Thank the Maker.
What's going on, man? I'm done with the Codex entries. There's Augren. It's late for you again, man. It's almost 2:30 for you. I did read all of them, though. I did read all the Codex entries. I've had this freaking thing up. I'm like, if there's a new one, I'm looking for it. Not even kidding. Oh.
You again.
Talk later. Right now, it's darkspawn killing time.
There we go.
Aha! There you are! Were When these darkspawn showed up, I thought, just you wait until the new commander gets here and you'll all be spitting teeth out of your arses. Followed the screaming, and sure enough, here you are. Good on ya. Doubting your eyes, huh? I get like that after the 5th bottle or so. Came here thinking I might try my hand at becoming a bona fide Grey Warden.
He was here when I left. I can't believe the Wardens didn't kick him out.
Well, hey, if it isn't the recruit with a great rack.
Yes, a prize for the Wardens, to be sure.
I know. Too good to be true, right? Hey, who's the mage? Boyfriend? Should I leave you two alone?
Wow, a dwarf that smells like a brewery. You never see that anywhere.
A mage comedian. Thought those normally died young.
I find that hard to believe.
As do I.
Now, let's go introduce some darkspawn arses to my foot. Only polite thing to do.
Yeah, okay. Yep, down here. You get things like rune crafting. Now let's just give him, yeah, survival is better. Yeah, definitely give him. Does he even have? Oh yeah, and they also give you this whole nother level of. Yep, he's master of two-handed now.
Myri?
Roland! Commander, Roland was a knight recruited from Denerim like me. We must do something for him.
He looks beyond healing magic. Maybe a shot of whiskey for the pain?
I like the way you think.
Stop joking! This isn't funny.
The commander? We only had a moment's warning before they were on us, Commander. The Seneschal ordered a counterattack, but they came out of nowhere. There's one with them. A darkspawn who talks. His magic is powerful.
A talking darkspawn? The lad must be delirious.
There's something in my blood. It hurts. It
What are you eating?
went that way.
Oh, what I had
After
left.
The Seneschal.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't have enough. It didn't have spice. That's, I guess I probably wanted some spice with it or something. I don't know.
I just made it the same way so that
Of
she
course.
could have some of it.
Of course. Oh, Myri leveled up.
Time for more darkspawn, I see. So I shall. Now this should be amusing. Stand back. I can handle this.
Here we go. What level is everyone? Oh, they're all my level. I guess they just all come started at my level. Because normally you actually start this at level 18. If you...
Yes,
Oh, I forgot it. I don't have a mage. I don't have a rogue with me. I will eventually get some.
It has ended, just as he foretold. Be taking this one gently. We are wishing no more death than is necessary.
Necessary? As if your kind has ever done anything else.
You are thinking you know of our kind, human? It is understandable, but that will soon be changed.
Others will come, creature. They will stop you.
There it is.
It seems your words be true. More than you are guessing.
It is talking.
Well,
Let's shut it up already.
Commander.
capture the Grey Warden. These others, they may be killed.
Attention to Darkspawn.
Fucking weapon, look at it. It's like a scythe, but it's really fucking tiny. No, it's like a sickle. It's a sickle. It's a really... He's holding it wrong, too. He's holding it backwards. And it's not... That's just not... Doesn't make any sense.
Commander, I owe you my life. Soldiers on the road. It seems we have more company. Hopefully they're more hospitable than our previous guests.
Wonder who greets us. Oh, it's Alistair, okay. Well, I say that because before it was...
It looks like I've arrived a bit late. Too bad. I rather missed the whole Darkspawn killing thing.
King, Alistair.
I'd wanted to come and give the Wardens a formal welcome. I certainly wasn't expecting this. What's the situation?
What Darkspawn remained have fled, Your Majesty. The Grey Wardens who had arrived from Orlais appear to be either dead or missing.
Missing? As in taken by the Darkspawn? Do they even do that?
I do not know, Your Majesty. I know only that we cannot account for all the Wardens.
I see. At least the hero of Ferelden is still here and alive. That's something, right?
Looks like you need to reach one of them.
Toss the throne aside. Spend my time adventuring at your side, just like old times. Very tempting. You have quite the task ahead of you. Really, I'd like to help you fight Darkspawn, but you're on your own for the moment.
Hey, what am I? Chopped nug livers?
From the smell, that's not a bad guess.
I came here to join the Grey Wardens, and from the looks of it, you could use the extra hands. Now where's the giant cup? I'll gargle and spit. Ha! Well, smack my ass and call me Sally. I'm in.
I suppose all are welcome in this dire time.
I love
Joining
Augren.
the Wardens, eh? Well, good luck with that.
King Alistair, your majesty beware, this man is a dangerous criminal.
Oh, the dwarf is a bit of an arse, but I wouldn't go that.
She means me.
This is an apostate who we are in the process of bringing back to the circle to face justice.
Oh, please. The things you people know about justice would fit into a thimble. I'll just escape again, anyhow.
Never. I will see you hanged for what you've done here, murderer.
Murderer? But those Templars were... Oh, what's the use? You won't believe me anyhow.
It seems there isn't much to say. Unless you have something to add, Commander.
What? Never.
I believe the Great Wardens still retain the right of conscription, no? I will allow it.
If your majesty feels it is best.
Ha! Way to go, kid. Welcome aboard.
Me? A Grey Warden? I guess that will work.
Congratulations, Sir Mage. I look forward to fighting at your side.
And if you have everything under control, I will need to take my leave.
I believe the estate has been secured, yes. We have suffered great losses, but the Darkspawn are gone, and there are survivors. Oh, excuse my manners. I am Vero, Seneschal of Vigil's Keep, and I am most grateful for your timely rescue, Commander. I will aid you in ruling the lands of Amaranthine. But as Commander of the Grey, you are the equivalent of our Arl as well. Come and speak to me soon. There are many matters to attend to, not the least of which is the joining. You will need to replenish your numbers.
Every party member that we have up to this point actually becomes a Great
The
Warden.
security of Ferelden relies on the Grey Wardens now, even weakened as the Order is. It will be up to you to deal with the vestiges of the Blight before the situation grows out of control. No easy task, but I'm confident you are up to it. Good luck, Commander. May the Maker watch over you.
Before we do anything else, Commander, there's an urgent matter we must take care of. Right now, I know of only one living warden assigned to all of Ferelden. That should be rectified. The others could aid you considerably.
The joining begins.
As you wish, Commander. The time has come for us to begin the joining. I shall speak the words that have been said since the first. Join us, brothers and sisters. Join us in the shadows where we stand, vigilant. Join us as we carry the duty that cannot be forsworn. And should you perish, know that your sacrifice will not be forgotten, and that one day we shall join you. From this moment forth, Augren, you are a Grey Warden.
What's this, the sampler size? Are you trying to say something about my height? Huh?
This is the goblet we've always used.
Really? Yeah. Not bad.
Make a
I love Augren so much. Why, hello. Look at this beautiful man.
You are a Grey Warden.
Oh, man. Well, hello,
Want to
Swaley.
drink Darkspawn blood. That's it.
That is it, yes.
Well, all right. But if I wake up 2 weeks from now on a ship bound for Ravane in nothing but my small clothes and a tattoo on my forehead, I'm blaming you.
He lives, Commander, and will awaken in time.
Hello, Arya.
From this moment forth, Myri, you are a Grey Warden.
I have awaited this moment.
Myri doesn't make it.
I am sorry, Myri. May the Maker watch over you now.
I actually got done with all the Codex entries.
Open the doors.
The commander must be informed about the Deep Road's entrance. It could be their base of operation.
You'd have the Wardens chase a rumor then, Captain. And even if it proves true, unless the Pilgrim's path is cleared by the time your army assembles, they'll have nothing to eat but shoe leather.
Garavel, Woolsey, the commander has had a long day.
Woolsey says some merchants escaped the Darkspawn. They can reprovision you for a reasonable fee. And the vigil is yours. Take whatever weapons and armor you need. We'll be waiting when you're ready.
Ooh, a battle axe. Still was good.
Mistress Woolsey says I can set up shop here. The merchant you saved was grateful to be alive. Restocked me for a bargain. The savings are yours, of course.
I have a mission
Do you
angry.
need anything, Commander?
That's the true question, Mike. Just saying. Isn't that good, actually? Oh, really? I gotta watch that, Mike.
The Tower of Magi has sent me as an ambassador, Commander. In addition to my diplomatic function, I'm a competent enchanter and runesmith. Is there anything you need? Of course.
Magic. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and just do this for now.
Sadly not.
Yeah. Yeah, he's already maxed out on two-handed, so these are the only ones he can really do. Resilience, I guess. Let's keep going with that. Ooh, what time are you thinking? Oh, what time is he thinking? Yeah, I'm curious too. What time are you thinking, Mike? I'm curious as well. Oh, these are also new. Okay. The nominal leader of our order is the First Warden, but you can expect little assistance or guidance so far from the Enderfels. Even those close to Weishaupt learn to suffer alone. The murmurs are true. The First Warden are often embroiled in the politics of Enderfels and has little opportunity to consider worldly matters. I would like to believe it is a matter of survival, not of political self-interest. Know that your mission is vital. You carry the hopes of your order. If highest among us hold noble titles outside the Enderfels, perhaps we will be better situated when the next blight comes, and we will all know what it must. I'll be there. Some kingdoms rigidly define the vassals and liege, define the rights of vassals and their duty to their liege. In Ferelden, a relatively new kingdom, the Arls and Arlesses theoretically command their Arlings, bands, and lords. In practice, those lessers are zealously maintain their independence. Some Ferelden vassals must be goaded into instead of ordered, swayed, not ruled. Vassals owe military obligations to their liege, yet often defy even sworn oaths and sign contracts. In contrast, the vassals expect their liege's protection despite provocation otherwise. A successful Ferelden liege applies force, persuasion, and duplicity in equal measure. Vigil. Vigil's Keep is one of the oldest settlements in Ferelden, other than Denerim and Gawarin. The barbarians who battled Tevinter Imperium often chose this location for a fortress so that their warning fires would be visible from a great distance when Tevinter ships were near the coast. The Vigil has seen battle in every major invasion of Ferelden. Tevinter's rival barbarians and Orlesians have all held her battlements. The Vigil was the first fortress to fall in the Orlesians and the last to be freed. Disciples are darkspawn that have been sapient or some sort of process of awakening, after which they choose their own names. They are cunning, powerful, and hold influence over non-awakened darkspawn. Anders. Afterwards, Anders was recruited into the Great Wardens. He survived the joining. He survived the joining. Is it? When the blight ended, Augren settled down with his old flame Felsi and had a child, but domestic bliss did not last, so Augren traveled to Vigil's Keep in hope of becoming a warden himself. Augren survived the joining. His extensive experience drinking bitter swill likely helped. Augren's passion for strong drink wasn't waned. Oh, I have Sinister Barrel. Okay, that's also new. Varel spent his life defending Amaranthine. When Rendon Howe was Arl, Varel briefly became Seneschal of Vigil's Keep, but he repeatedly objected to Howe's orders and was demoted to lower and lower ranks. Nevertheless, he continued to serve with defiance. When Howe's acts turned more sinister, Val secretly sheltered those in need and used what little power he could counteract Arl's atrocities. Soon Varel was languishing in the dungeon awaiting execution, but Hal died first. When the Great Wardens took over Amaranthine, the order reappointed Varel as Seneschal. Although Varel is not a warden himself, his position as the chief administrator of the wardens lands him privy to many secrets of the order, including the joining ritual. This is a rare honor. It's a testament to his character. Yeah, it is. Is all got quests for me. So but is he also submissive? Oh, okay. So now is a great time to stop. I read so much Codex entries today, guys. Oh my god. Oh my god. But we're on to the main game. Boom, 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 boom. So I will do this again tomorrow. I don't know what time. Probably later in the day. We got a lot of stuff we got to do earlier. Then once we do that, toucan boobs. No. No. Shame. For shame. Oh. Oh God. Okay, so who's playing right now? Oh, my friend, Mr. American. Ah, he's a coworker of mine. And he is also not yet affiliate. I want to try and get him there. So I'm going to go ahead and rate him. And so, as I said, I'll be back later in the day tomorrow. I don't necessarily know what time. But then after I'm done with everything, I'm going to try and do it as soon as I'm done with everything. So I will see y'all tomorrow. And I'm going to type in his name real quick. All right, guys. Have a good night. Love you guys. Aria, Mike, Swaley, Genova for the raid earlier. Everybody, thank you guys so much for being here. Sitting through me boring the fuck out of everybody with Codex, backstory, and everything. But love you guys. Have a good night. I will see you tomorrow.
Oh, what's up, Ethan? Yeah, good stream.